everyone, and welcome to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. Hi there, it's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my sidekick, Austin, the Day Ghost.
Yo.
Tonight we are tackling a major 20th anniversary movie. We put several of these on a wheel and we spun it, and we got some people's favorite superhero movie of all time, and I know a lot of our crowd loves this movie. It's Spider-Man 2. Tonight we're going to do, I want to say, Austin, the third commentary I've done on Spider-Man 2. And I'm sure it would be interesting to go back to each of these and see how I have evolved over time. Because I guarantee you this one is once again going to be a little different.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had that over the last 10 years. Like, I've had every single feeling you can have about this movie, like one way or the other, I feel like, at some point in the last 10 years.
There was a time where I was like, I just don't even want to talk about it anymore. You know, like, I'm tired of arguing about this movie. Like, I got the feelings I've got about it. The stuff that doesn't work, I'm never going to budge on. And I'll say, a lot of the things that I've, for a long time, felt like don't work about this movie, I still have. But it's a... And some of you guys will be surprised, because there's at least one thing I've turned around on as of this viewing. And I'll talk about that when we get there. It's also possible if we did this again in 5 or 10 years, I'd swing right back around on it. But right now, and I don't mean to be wishy-washy, it's just like I always say, you're never the same person day to day. And the person I am right now, going back and looking at this, there's a scene I've always had an issue with, and I watched it this time and I was like, I don't even know what my problem was with this before. Like, it's fine. Like, I get the context of it. I don't know, it's fine. So we'll talk about that when we get there, but it's more, Austin, an issue of like degree and I don't know what the word is I'm looking for, but just like how much it bothers you versus the way it did before. Like, a lot of the issues I have with this movie I still have, but some of them I just don't have the same like level of irritation about it that I once did. There's like, I feel like I've got a little bit of a different perspective on it now.
Yeah, and I do find that one of the things that these movies have in their favor is that we've had 2 reboots since.
And that's part of what I was going to say is, in an interesting way, and obviously this is a much better movie than this, but we've got a little bit, or at least I shouldn't speak for you, Austin. I have a little bit of an X-Men Origins thing with this, where it's like, after certain other things come out, and just the whole of superhero history now, superhero movie history now, going back and looking at this, there's just stuff that's not as big of a deal anymore to me. That used to really piss me off, and now I'm like, yeah, it's still an issue, but I feel like after so many like really bad superhero movies lately, and there have been some decent things here and there, but like I've swung almost all the way back around on this as, oh yeah, I miss when we made movies like this. You know, I kind of had that real hard this viewing, and I talked about that when I did the unscripted review before we were doing these commentaries on Spider-Man 1, where I had I saw a lot of things in it that I had never seen before, and I don't know that I had that with this, but I don't know, like I miss this era. I mean, and it's not just it's this era, so it's good. Like, we had all kinds of criticisms about Daredevil when we did that not too long ago, but I guess the point I'm making is, you had Roger Ebert and other critics in 2004, again, 20 years old now, which is nuts in my brain. It's absolutely baffling. And I say all the time, where does the time go? But with this, really, how's it been 20 years? You had Roger Ebert and other critics that said best superhero movie of all time, at that point, and there weren't a ton of them yet, so like it kind of made sense that people felt that way about it. But then some of those guys were still saying that years later, after Batman Begins and Dark Knight and Iron Man and Avengers and a lot of these other movies came out, and I'm like, well, now that you have some of these more sophisticated things to compare it to, how are you still saying that? And so it started not holding up as well to me, just in comparison. And you try not to compare things too much, but it's human condition. You cannot help but do that to some degree. Where there were things that I wanted to see, like there were like levels of storytelling I wanted to see superhero and comic book movies get to that they hadn't yet by Spider-Man 2, that we then achieved later with other movies. And then you get to DCEU and Phase 4 and 5 of MCU, and we've kind of backtracked again with a lot of this stuff. And we're making, like, the kinds of movies we were making in the mid-2000s, but with less heart and less people that really want to be there, and it's more obligatory. And the one thing you have to admit about this period, whether you like this period of superhero movies or not, is that it wasn't obligatory. You know, it was a big deal that these things were making money and studios were actually greenlighting them. And as Avi Arad talks about in the commentary, which I went back and re-listened to on the that was on the regular disc for this. There's a couple commentaries on the set that I have, but I haven't listened to the other one yet because it's just a technical commentary. We mostly deal with story on this show, but I should listen to that at some point. I'm sure it's interesting. But anyway, Okay, I've now lost my train of thought. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. So
I'm watching Austin with this face like, when is he gonna stop talking?
No, I looked down and I just saw super chat and I was reading that.
Yeah, thanks. I'll get to that in just a second.
Yeah, no, you're okay. I was listening to what you were saying though. I guess I should go into my.
Oh no, I know. I went on a long time. Apologies there.
No, you're okay. I remember when I was a kid, my grandparents had a burnt DVD combo pack thing where it was like you go into the movie and you pick which movie you want to watch, and it was Spider-Man 2 and Attack of the Clones. And I hated that DVD so much because I was like, both of those movies are so boring. As a kid, this was my least favorite of the trilogy.
Interesting.
I know, right? Isn't that weird? At this point, I feel like they're all around the same for me. Like all three of them have a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same pros.
Oh, interesting. I still say 3 is a massive step down from both of them, and because it has a lot of story missteps that this movie does not have. Well, I just think the whole direction of that movie is kind of wrong.
The weakest, and then I think the first one's the best one.
Yeah, and that was the experience I had last time I watched that, and I was appreciating some of the ways, and some of it is just technical and superficial, but I was appreciating again some of the ways that Sam Raimi just really stepped up his game with this movie, and so
absolutely.
Like story-wise, there's an argument to be made for either of them, but there's certainly a little bit more character stuff to chew on. It's just some of it is a little off, and I'm not really buying it. I'll talk about why, and hopefully won't repeat myself too much because I have some new stuff to bring to the table, I think. But
yeah, and my big thing with this movie is Raimi's great. Some of the cast I'm more mixed on, and the writers of Smallville suck. And that's this movie.
We'll talk about that. What I started to say earlier, and I'm remembering what I was going to say now, Austin, is in the commentary, Avi Arad, and I think he's absolutely right about this. Brings up the leeway that Raimi and the writers and producers had on this movie in letting it breathe and actually allowing some character work and not making it just all about the action. And you can say comparatively to however, whatever snooty term you want to use, more highbrow films, smarter, films with smarter storytelling, whatever. But that it's maybe thin, but compared to other superhero movies from before this, it really does take its time more and breathe more, and it gets us closer to what Donner was doing. And I think he's absolutely right about that. And so I think it would be a mistake to undersell or underappreciate how much more cookie cutter and just an action piece this could have been. And again, I think it is, even though I've got issues with a lot of the relationship stuff in particular. it's even less that way than the first movie was, and I'm sure Raimi would have liked some of the character stuff to breathe and to be able to explore more relationships and dynamics and stuff in that first movie than he was allowed to. He was probably kept a little bit more on a leash, not knowing if that was going to succeed. Because it's really easy now for us to lose perspective and forget, not appreciate how hard it was even to get a thing like this greenlit as late as 2002 with that first movie.
Mm-hmm.
And how long Spider-Man just sat in development hell.
Yeah, for over a decade. And, like, with big names on it, too. Like, it's not like, it just got passed around to whatever studio.
Yeah, absolutely. Manu put in a 50 Mexican peso super chat. Thanks for that. Appreciate you, man. He says, longtime fan since Arrow discussions. Wow. But this is my first live, and welcome, because pretty much everything we do now is live, and my first super chat. And we got to put in a gong for that, partly because, YouTube told me to, not that YouTube knows about the gong, but that YouTube says it's the first super on a live stream, so I was hit the gong for that. He says, love this movie, hope you can give it a chance with an open mind.
Yeah, and I thought you were going to go with the, oh my god, what's your song you do on the Captain Logan show?
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that on Rewind. Okay. Take you for a ride.
Take you for a ride. I was going to say, if you're going to do that, blast the Neversoft Spider-Man theme.
Oh no!
No, that theme's awesome. That's not a Genesis.
Oh, okay. I didn't know what you meant by that.
That's the Dreamcast games theme. It's got a really cool remix.
Okay, because at first I was just imagining the creepy clown voice again, and from that Green Goblin level on the Genesis.
Love that.
That's what we'll start playing when people put in a super chat. Is let's go ahead and get into the movie. I'm sure we've got a lot to say, and I've never watched this movie with Austin, so it's going to be fun to do this. And it'll be interesting to see what criticisms and what accolades Austin and I actually line up on, because I know that Austin's pretty critical of this movie, but I bet there's a lot of the same things that we have issues with and don't. But I wonder if there's anything where you're like, that's a problem, and I'm like, nah, I'm won over now. Mm-hmm. Or in vice versa. So see what happens with that. Let me ask you real quick before we get into this. Did you have, because you said you've had every kind of, you've run the gamut, like every kind of emotion. There's a spectrum when it comes to Raimi's Spider-Man movies and how we feel about them. Did you have any kind of a whiplash sort of response to this viewing, or is it more or less what you had last time you saw it?
More or less how it was last time I watched them. I watched all three of them right after No Way Home. I think I showed my youngest brother all three of them.
Which feels real recent, but was somehow 4 years ago.
I think 3, but still.
21, was it not?
21, yeah.
Okay, but that was only 3 years. I'm stupid. Anyway.
No, it's okay. No, I feel like I'm just kind of
I don't know why I was
to my place with this.
I don't know. I was thinking that maybe I should take a nap and then we'll go ahead and do the commentary.
Sounds good.
But still, 3 years.
Mm-hmm. I know, isn't that wild?
I'm just saying, like, you can change a lot in 3 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no kidding.
And I was going to say, I've at least seen a different Spider-Man movie or new Spider-Man movie since then, but you haven't because you can't watch the Spider-Verse movies.
Yeah, and I don't think I've even rewatched any of the Spider-Man movies since I did that after No Way Home.
And I haven't seen No Way Home again since the theater.
Okay, that's not true. I did see No Way Home.
I was going to say, I thought somebody in your family made you watch it again.
Yeah, they did. I forgot. And actually, now that I say that, they made me watch Far From Home as well. So I've rewatched the last 2 MCU Spider-Man movies in the last year.
You liar.
I know, I'm just being stupid.
All right, everybody. That's okay. I've already made about 19 mistakes since we started the show tonight, so we'll see if we can turn it around here. Everybody, get your movie to timestamp 0 as always. This movie, of course, is available on Disney Plus, and you can pull out your DVD, Blu-ray, however you want to watch it. We are watching the theatrical cut. There is a longer. This is another one of those movies where there is a longer version that has like significant additions, and more significant than something like even like say arguably the Tim Story Fantastic Four movie. It's 8 minutes longer. There's some alternate stuff. There's some longer action scenes. There's some totally new scenes, most of which I think honestly should have been left in probably. But we'll talk about those as we go. We're not going to watch that because more people will have access to this, especially on streaming. And that is typically what we do here. If there's a much, much different cut, we will try to do that cut.
And it is one of those things where
we'll just
I see the cuts when I rewatch the theatrical version now.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that.
Well, I have to admit that I've never actually sat through 2.1 cover to cover.
Okay.
I've watched all the individual scenes, but I was only recently made aware actually of a couple of scenes in it, and that I thought that I didn't know about or that I hadn't seen. So like I knew about this cut, but I never actually sat through it, and then it's been playing on TV a lot for whatever reason, like 2.1. And
weird.
I was at somebody's house and it was playing, and I saw the alternate elevator scene, which I had never seen.
The scene that goes on way too long.
Yeah, they made the right choice on that.
Yeah,
Absolutely. It turns into Ghostbusters 2013 for about 2 minutes and 43 seconds, or 1 minute and 43 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely.
What did I say?
2013.
2016.
When I showed it to my younger brother, that's the version I showed him, and I was like, "Oh, get ready! We're about to get the part where the guy goes go," and
Yeah.
then he looks at Peter and he's like, "Go!" And I was like, "Oh, it's an alternate cut, alternate take."
Yeah. It's that Deadpool 2 thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, I guess it's cool to see these, but or to see a cut with the stuff brought back in, but it's not the definitive cut, you know.
Yeah, well, because they don't have the go part, there's now no perfect cut of Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, well, and there still wouldn't be because that elevator scene goes on too long.
Yeah, that's a lot of 2.1. There's a
And
lot
some of the
just
extra
extended
stuff
gags.
in the fights is probably not all that necessary. Like, it's longer than it needs to be, I imagine. But again, I've never actually sat through it. So, knowing what's in it, I imagine it's got real pacing issues, like some other longer. I can't think of anything right now. Like some other longer cuts where it's like it's nice to see this, but it's not the way you would really want to put it out.
I have a thing about that with the train fight, but we'll get there when we get there.
I mean, even Daredevil has that
Yeah,
to a degree.
for sure. Yeah, I have a whole thing about a whole diatribe, if you will, about the train fight. So we'll get there when we get there.
Okay, I was going to ask you something about it, but I guess I'll wait till we get there. All right.
Oh, I mean, you can if you want.
Oh no, I was just gonna. Is your thing that it just goes on way too long, or
Yes, so I think it goes on way too long, and then I think the additions in
it knows how
2.1
much of a technical achievement it is, and for a minute it seems like it's just like action movie film school.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's great.
Yeah, but then the 2.1 version adds more to it, but it adds more into the first half that I like more. So I'm like, oh, like
Oh,
this is cool.
interesting. Okay, I'll have to actually sit through that cut at some point. And I should have done that for this, and I just didn't have time to do. I would have had to do 3 full watches of this movie this week, and I just didn't have time to do it. But
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
what you're describing kind of reminds me a little bit of the even longer pod race scene.
I didn't even know that was a thing. Oh
Oh
god.
man, if you go see the extended pod race scene, it's like 12 minutes longer. I mean, it's just preposterous. And there's all this.
The pod racing scene is already really boring.
Well, they spend a bunch of time establishing some of the racers. And so it's not even the race itself that's much longer. It's just a bunch of preamble. Sort of like this. So let's go ahead and get started. Timestamp 0, get ready to press play when I say now. I'm just about to do it. Appreciate you guys joining us live, and thanks for watching after the fact as well. Interact with us in the comments if you're watching live, and as always, Super Chats will guarantee that we talk about whatever aspect you want us to. We'll try to chat with you regularly as well, and away we go. Everybody, please press play right now. Here we go again. I'm having massive deja vu.
Here we
I feel
go
like
again, but not on your own. Going down the only road you've ever known.
no. This time I've got a net. I've got Austin. If I just go totally off the rails and I say 13 when I mean 16, I got Austin here to catch me when I fall.
How do you like Elfman's score for these? I guess he only does the first two, but for these movies.
I like it quite a bit.
Okay, no, fair enough. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, like there's a part of me that wants to criticize the places that it reminds me a little bit of Batman, just because it's got some of Elfman's hallmarks.
And
But
there's a bit of Darkman in it too.
and there's some Darkman in it. But I think he does a shockingly good job of giving it the appropriate, like, lighter, more kind of wholesome flavor that it needs to be Spider-Man, even while it still has that operatic, theatrical epic thing that he's doing also in Batman. So like it doesn't sound gothic, but it's still that big bombastic orchestral thing, particularly in the main titles here.
Yeah. I've always not like I like his score for these movies, but I don't necessarily like them for Spider-Man. I think they're a little too like epic opera-y. But I also think Raimi's take on Spider-Man is also a little bit more that way than what I want.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I mean, for me, it just fits this material.
No, exactly. Because I think there is more Superman to Raimi's Spider-Man, where he's a little bit bigger than what I think of as Spider-Man.
And I don't know if that would have been the case as much had he made these like 10 or 15 years later with, and I mean, it's weird having that, if then conversation, because these are so foundational to getting more superhero movies. But assume something else happened where we had a big superhero boom, but it isn't Spider-Man, and then Sam Raimi makes this movie a lot later. Would he be looking as much at Donner? I don't know. I mean, part of that's happening because that's what's there. Most of the superhero landscape, not all, but obviously, and you and I did a whole series about this, but most of the superhero landscape before this is Batman and Superman. And so you have, and Danny Elfman worked on the Batman side of it. So you have Superman for your more lighthearted, larger than life iconic superhero, and then you have Batman for, it's still iconic, but you have Batman for your street level, more down to earth sort of human guy, and then Spider-Man is somewhere in the middle of that.
Well,
and so he's looking.
Sorry, go ahead.
In a weird way, he's actually splitting the middle between them, which I've never really thought about before. But he's definitely taking his cues a lot more from Donner than he is from Burton.
Absolutely. One, it's also interesting
Or
for Marvel at the time, where you have X-Men, Blade, Daredevil. They're all, oh look, The Matrix just came out. While these movies are more let's go back to Donner.
And let's go to back to the classic comic feel, and let's not forget about the kids.
Yeah, so like Spider-Man doesn't have to wear a leather suit and things like that. We're bringing back some of that earnestness.
It's still, yeah, and Earnest is the word of the night, and the big word I wanted to bring to this and talk about a lot. And that's the thing that's missing sometimes from these more like, for lack of a better word, like fluffier, lighthearted kinds of superhero movies that we make now, is they just tend to get kind of cookie cutter and routine, and there's not any heart behind them. And this is one of our tweet length reviews later is going to use the word quaint, and I think at one time that was the thing that was holding it back from me, for me in holding up very well. And I've turned back around. That's what I like about it.
Yeah. No, very true.
I appreciate that quaintness. I think you have to, and also, and I've got this with 89, and some other things as well. You also have to have this before you can get to, as a stepping stone, to the superhero movies that challenged the genre more. We don't want to start like deconstructing and reinventing the wheel until we've had the wheel, and I think I missed the wheel
No, very true.
So my review is Spider-Man 2 is the wheel.
This scene especially is so Superman, where he saves the kids and he's like, be careful when you cross the street or whatever.
And how much Superman 2 is in the ending of this movie too.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love that. And that was a direct reference point. For Raimi too. He talks about that in his commentary.
Okay. I should mention too, this guy who takes the pizza slice is the co-writer of Evil Dead 2.
Oh, that's great. You gotta ask yourself, what does Spider-Man do with the slice of pizza? Because like it'd be kind of gross if you put it back in the box. Like he takes it back from the guy who steals it, but it's got webbing all over it. Like and the guy had his mitts all over it. Like that's gross.
This is something I've been thinking about since I was a kid, because I don't think these movies ever really established that his web dissolves. So it's like, some kid's just eating pizza. He's got web in it.
Yeah, and it's way grosser because it came out of the man's actual wrist.
It came out of him, yeah.
Yeah.
It's horrifying. This is a scene that goes on way longer in the extended cut.
Yeah, and it's too long here.
Well, there's a whole bit after this. Like, I don't know if you noticed, when he's leaving, he walks back to the closet, and it cuts real quick. There's a whole bit where he tries to walk back in the closet, and the woman's
no,
and the woman's like, "Sir, the elevator's right here," and then he turns around and walks into the elevator.
Look,
and there's also the one pizza's crushed.
Look, when you're out of the closet, it's very difficult to get back in the closet. Especially when the closet doesn't seem to be connected to anything. I know I've complained about this 100 times before, but I've always been stuck on that, where it's like, is there a skylight that leads into the, like, how did he wind up in that closet? It seems like Looney Tunes logic to me.
See, I just always assumed there was like a vent in the closet. That feels like a classic Spider-Man thing that we do a lot, where it's like he just comes out of a closet or goes into a closet.
Yeah, well, that's a place where maybe we should have seen him go into a vent or something. Mm-hmm. There's a few of those in this movie where I'm like, all you needed was that 2-second shot to establish a thing that I'm confused about.
But it's funny because that extended version's a minute longer and it doesn't include that.
Doesn't even have that, yeah. We've got a couple super chats, and I'll read those in a minute. And thanks for the support, guys. One thing I wanted to mention, just because I'd never noticed it before, we talked over it, but when we have that zoom in, and you use the word earnest, I love the kind of, I can't think of a better word to use than just old school, but the kind of lighthearted old school sort of method of just like cartoonishly zooming on stuff to establish them and really put a point on something. That works in this movie in a way that it wouldn't something more realistic. Mm-hmm. And I like that a lot. There's a bit where we do that on a clock when he looks up at it and decides he's going to go get in his Spider-Man costume.
Yeah. And
the clock says Tempus Fugit on it.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I had not noticed that before, but that's great.
You got your Clock King in there.
Well, there's that, and also it's just great for the situation.
Yeah, no, of course.
He's in a big hurry. Now, one of the things that makes Peter Parker really sympathetic in this to me is that no one around him, and I'm going to talk a little bit about like contrived situations in order to make his life hell. And I appreciate that and there are several writers on this ultimately, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but I appreciate that Raimi and Chabon and Goff and Miller and all the writers on this are really putting Peter Parker through his paces, but there's a real fine line between heightened comic book thing where just he's got Parker luck and everything, the whole world seems out to get him, and just really easy contrived situations to make his life that way. And I think everybody's going to have to draw their own line. That is not an entirely objective thing. There are places where it's too far to me and places where it's not. And one of the things where it's a little bit too far to me is it is perfectly fair and reasonable how difficult it is for Peter Parker to get around New York City. It's New York City. Mm-hmm. And there's all these places where people are just not, like, apparently no one else has a problem with going, like, blocks and blocks in order to get to someplace in 11 minutes. And, like, Aziz does it to him, and Mary Jane does it to him, and I'm like, what do you guys expect? It's New York City. He's on a moped. You're basically, and the Spider-Man thing adds a whole extra wrinkle that these people don't understand, and obviously that's the kind of Shakespearean comedy of the whole thing. But even without that, it's kind of you're basically blaming him for being poor.
I mean, yeah, he shouldn't be poor.
And other poor people are blaming him for being poor. Or at least other people that aren't, super well off.
I guess it's because it keeps happening, and obviously we're dumped in the middle of this, so you're just kind of left to assume that. But
no, there is a lot of that where if I just understood the context or got to see more of the context.
You got to play Spider-Man 2 the game where you're constantly late at everything.
And that's one of the reasons that, well, and that is classic Stan Lee stuff. It's just, as much as I'm praising the movie for breathing as much as it does, at least for the time in comparison to others of these kinds of movies, I'm also a little impatient with places where I wish it did that more.
Yeah, for sure.
And some of that, admittedly, might be modern sensibilities or other movies of this ilk that have been able to do that. But I had some of that when this came out as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think there are aspects of what Peter's going through that are done really well. Like, I think everything with Aunt May pretty much all works, and then everything with Mary Jane doesn't.
Well, most of the thing with Aunt May works. There's one thing that bothered me this time that I'd never thought about before, I don't think, that I'll talk about when we get to the bank. There's a thing in the bank that bugs me.
Is it that she kicks that dude?
Nope. It's not that. I don't know why she kicks him that hard, but she does it on accident. I don't think I fully understood what was going on there before, but she was trying to kick Peter, I think, and missed and kicked that guy.
I think so.
I think that's what it was.
I think so, yeah.
Anyway, but we'll get to that when we get to that scene. Yeah. There is a longer version of this scene in 2.1 that solves a pretty big issue that I've always had with Harry Osborn, and God, I just wish it went on longer. Do you remember that scene?
No, I remember that it's longer, but I don't remember what it is.
It's pretty well written, and what it does is it has Harry apologizing for raking Peter over the coals about taking pictures of Spider-Man, and kind of reassessing all of that and saying, basically agree to disagree. I'm sorry I'm so hard on you about this. Your family, I love you like a brother, but most importantly, my father loved you like a son.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah, Harry, that is a really good scene.
It needed to stay in because Harry's whole character arc in this is about deferring to his father on everything after death. It's about how he's still trying to get his father's approval even after his dad is dead. And for the longest time, this is one of the things I'm won over on a little bit. And was on this viewing even before I went back and looked at that scene again, by the way. This is, by the way, one of Rosemary Harris's best moments.
She's so good.
When she says, you can take this money from me. And she's in debt. She honestly probably should save her money.
But it's hard, like, when you're in the situation. Like,
absolutely.
I get where she's coming from. I also really like how human the scene where he tells her about Uncle Ben is, where she leaves and needs to take, like, a day.
It might be objectively the best scene of the movie.
Yeah, as a kid, I was like, why is this going on so long? Like, it's so boring. And as an adult, I'm like, oh my God, this is really powerful.
Yeah, and you're like, I could have used a little bit more of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wonderful. But anyway, what I was going to say is I used to take more issue with all of the just lack of communication, and I still have that with Peter and Mary Jane, don't get me wrong. But all of the lack of communication with Peter and Harry, and Harry hating Spider-Man for killing his father, who was never much of a father to him. And it used to seem kind of obligatory to me, and like it was sort of a plot device. Now, I still think Mary Jane is treated too much like a plot device, and that her perspective is not coming enough from a character plays. And I know there's people watching us right now that don't agree with me on that, and we might just have to agree to disagree. I've not backed down from that yet. I'm just not seeing it.
What I had this time with her is I was noticing how often we have large stretches without her, and I was like, oh, like their relationship's one of my biggest issues, and I feel like it's disappearing for other things that he's dealing with for long periods, that it wasn't bothering me as much.
Oh, interesting.
As an overall package.
Yeah, well, it becomes a percentage thing, and that's what I was talking about earlier, is degree. Yeah. Like, I still have all the same issues I had with it, but I was appreciating other things more, where, like, it comes out in the wash at the end of the day, but it's still the weakest thing, and it's enough of what is motivating him, and it's too much a part of the loss of powers subplot, which still doesn't really work for me.
You're still getting the whites coming out with red and blue splats out of the wash, but it's wearable.
That's awesome. That's a really good metaphor. And that's actually a much better metaphor than the loss of powers thing, because I wish that it made sense story-wise and then could be a metaphor. The problem with it is it's just a metaphor. But we can talk about that.
I have major issues with the power loss thing.
Yeah, I know you do, and I'm right there with you. But I will. And sorry, guys, I will read the super chats here in a second. But I just want to finish the point I was making about the Harry Osborn thing to say that whole thing actually works a lot better for me than it ever used to, because I'm starting to appreciate that. And I don't know if I just was hung up on the kind of melodrama of it, and not seeing where it was maybe coming from like a real character perspective with Harry. But I think the idea, and I don't think it's just on paper, I think it is delivered well enough, but maybe it needed to be drove home more. And it is, if you leave that minute longer, that minute left in that scene, that helps it a lot. But I think the point of it is supposed to be the actual point is what I said earlier, that his father was not much of a father to him, and he is really insecure about that and wrestling with that after his father's death, and so he is almost like willingly trying to become his father in order to, again, seek approval after death. And that's the reason he hates Spider-Man. And so it's all internal. Like it's not anything like disingenuous he's doing it. Well, I mean it is, but like the movie's not on his side about it at all. It isn't like, if only he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, the movie would be kind of on his side. And sometimes I feel that way about Mary Jane, where it's like, I can't decide if the movie is siding with her or not, because she doesn't know that Peter Parker is Spider-Man, and so she's, like, maybe she's doing nothing wrong, but I still think she's absolutely doing things wrong, and it's kind of a toxic relationship. I'm not having that with Harry. There's also a scene that's missing with her that suggests the movie is not as much on her side as I thought it was with her, too. Having to do with marrying John Jameson. I don't know if you remember that scene.
No, which one's that? I might when you tell me.
There's a scene where she's talking with a friend at a shoe store.
Oh, this sounds familiar.
Which is it's laid on a little thick, and it's a little too sappy. I don't like some of the dialogue in it. But I like the idea on paper where her friend tells her, you obviously don't love John Jameson. It's not right for you to run off and marry him. And it's kind of saying there are going to be consequences for that character making that choice, and I could never decide whose side it was on with some of what's being done with her. And there's this great bit in that scene where, like, there's some paralleling with her insecurities about her father and Harry's insecurity about his. and it's all missing because both of those scenes were cut.
That's unfortunate. They should probably be here.
Yeah. So that makes me sad. And I would feel differently about it and would have in the first place if that was brought back.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to backtrack a little bit because I could tell you wanted to say something about the landlord and all of that.
No, I was just going to say, like, God, don't you miss when superhero movies had supporting casts? I was going to say that earlier.
Yeah, when they could just stop and be kind of fun like that. Like, it's kind of nice that Peter is thrown completely through the ringer, but the movie is still as wholesome and lighthearted as it is. There is a pretty impressive balancing act that's being done with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It never feels super dour. I also just miss when Jameson was a character and the Daily Bugle was a thing that was there. That was a big thing I had rewatching these.
Well, it's that Man of Steel and Batman versus Superman problem where it's like but I want the definitive versions of these characters, and I want the characters to get definitive enough before you start like massively messing with them like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which, I mean, arguably you did have with Superman, but arguably not as much with Batman, even though there was more Batman, and I liked a lot of those movies.
Yeah. So with Alfred Molina, I don't know what it is, but last time I watched it, it kind of clicked. I was like, there's like a Bruce Campbell-y quality to his performance where he's just very charismatic. And I wondered if that's maybe why Sam Raimi gravitated towards him, because he wasn't like a big name. He's not what I want from Doc Ock, but I also really like just this character in this movie.
I do too, and
like
honestly,
I still think there's a definitive Doc Ock to be made on film, but I like Doc Ock in this movie as its own thing.
Yeah, I've always been kind of two minds about it because it would be nice to. Real quick, I'm just going to say, you said he had kind of a Bruce Campbell quality, also a little bit of a Liam Neeson quality to that point.
Interesting. Okay, I've never thought of that.
Just in the kind of charisma that he has in Darkman pre-turning into the monster.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which is not a thought I had until you said that, and I'm like, I think Bruce Campbell, or I think Raimi might have been thinking about Darkman also, and he's thinking about Darkman with a lot of this movie, by the way.
Oh, of course.
The alleyway scene when Peter leaves his costume is an alley that he shot in Darkman.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that.
I found out about that today because I did some homework.
Mm-hmm. I had like PTSD watching this scene where I was like, "Oh God, remember that awful Amazing 2 scene with Aunt May where it's just like 3 minutes of Peter, you always ruin the laundry." Aunt May, I was washing the flag.
The flag.
Like, shut up.
Then why is there no white in there also? Real quick to that point, I think one of the reasons that going back to this now after Far From Home, No Way Home, I'm maybe coming back around on it again a little bit is because we have now had 2 reboots with, in my opinion, again, just my opinion, one really solid entry, and then after that they kind of fall apart. And this trilogy, you at least got 2 out of 3, and that ain't bad. Like, yeah, it's a series that I stay invested in longer. I have not had now. MCU gets to cheat because there's good Spider-Man stuff in movies that don't have Spider-Man in the title. Mm-hmm. So like there is that.
Well, and also with this, I think Raimi's first 2 villains are really good. They're very like formula-y, where like he's kind of doing the same thing with them to a degree.
That was a big point I was going to make about Doc Ock. When I started to say I'm of 2 minds about it, it's because I'd like to see a more definitive Doc Ock, I guess, also. But I like the mentor thing. And I like the character depth that's done with him, and I like that I care about that guy, and he ends up not actually really being the villain. But at the same time, he's also kind of like a more improved. He's like an improved version of their Green Goblin in certain ways.
Oh, 100%. And then I think the Amazing movies take the formula of the villain, but like don't really understand it, and they're doing what these movies are doing, but way worse. And then I think at least the first two MCU ones drop the formula, but they go back to having really good villains, like these first two films did.
This was some great trailer fodder, by the way.
Oh, there's a lot of trailer fodder in this movie.
But it was really good. Am I remembering this right? Right, where like the teaser or one of the trailers like opens with him catching that car, and then she goes into web. I think they
so.
I think they did that.
And then Sam Raimi's just showing off with that truck shot.
Yes, he is. Well, it seemed like their way of doing the Twin Towers teaser again, but actually
sure.
getting to
so they can
use it this time. Yeah.
This is a sequence that's extended. This was one I never understood as a kid until I watched 2.1. The idea is that Peter drives this car to the play.
Yeah, I never got that either until Sam Raimi mentions it in the commentary.
Yeah, there's a whole thing where he gets behind the wheel and he starts like undressing while he's driving.
He sounded a little irritated that they had to cut that, where he was like, okay, does anybody understand why he's driving this car? Anybody understand that?
It makes
and I was like, nope.
If you're paying enough attention, like, yes, but it makes it awkward that you might not immediately get it if you don't know. And then Bruce Campbell's cameo here is just awesome.
Yeah, it's really funny. If I were Peter, I would have worked harder to get in there somehow. Like, you're Spider-Man. You probably figure out a way to get in there. I mean, you found a vent to get into that closet, apparently.
They should have just cut into the play and he's like messing around with brooms in a closet. And it ruins the play.
That's great.
Just punch him out, Peter. What's the worst thing that's going to happen? He's going to become Mysterio?
Yeah, exactly. Because he was supposed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, man. We're already 27 minutes into this, and I've got like 19 things I've wanted to bring up already that I haven't been able to get to yet. But
it is one of those movies. It is going to be hard to get through everything.
There's so much to talk about. And like new stuff I haven't really discussed that much, I don't think. So contrived situations, and also just like excuses to make characters madder than they would be if we were writing this character driven. This is the big reason I still have, or one of the big reasons I still have major issues with the relationship stuff. So Mary Jane is going to be really angry with Peter, who she's not even dating right now, for not making it to her show yet for a play series that she's still going to do lots and lots of performances of. So like he still has a chance to get there. When he calls her and explains like how hard he worked to get in there and the guy wouldn't let him in, it seems really petty to me that she's mad at him.
See,
if it happened over and over again, sure, but it seems a little petty in this particular situation.
See, I actually will give it to her in this place, just because him blaming the usher sounds really like just not taking responsibility for anything and blaming this person when he wouldn't have had that issue if he was just on time.
Once again, he's got to do the Superman thing. I never liked
just the
that.
Madam Web shot.
We might have to agree to disagree on that particular point, Austin. Because my issue with it is, like, well, he clearly made it into the building. Like, he was trying really hard. But it also becomes that it gets complicated because maybe you can sort of see her side with it because she doesn't have all the information. And then you have to blame Peter for the other side of it. Because, yes, he can't tell her about Spider-Man. Now, we'll also talk about how she already maybe knows he's Spider-Man, but isn't considering that at all. That whole thing drives me nuts. but anyway, because it feels like a retcon, and then toward the end of the movie, she'll go, "I think I've always known," and then I'm like, "Okay, well, you've really had your cake and eaten it too on this now." Where you have the kiss at the end of last movie, and then we kind of pretend to forget about it, and then it becomes a plot point again, and I'm like, what?
Well, and isn't it funny because again, I think the way we handle that with Aunt May is kind of perfect, and then
Yeah,
it's
they
wonky
nail
with
that.
MJ.
Okay, here's the correct
And this
elevator
seems
scene.
already too long.
Well, they just think this guy's hilarious.
hmm
And there's a little bit of a like Chris Hemsworth improv thing happening here.
Yeah, except if it were Liam Hemsworth.
I mean, it's not. It was cute once in the theater, but like,
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah, it really goes.
It holds a beat too long.
Yeah, but
Like,
anyway,
I think at first it's funny, and then
the
it's
point I was going to make is some of this is just contriving stuff to have a really exciting action scene. What Peter should have said when he calls Mary Jane to give his reason for not making it on time
Mhm.
is, "I almost died."
Yes.
Because it isn't just that you got to think about what
And
actually
that would be
happens
in
in the
the
scene.
news.
Sorry, what?
That would be in the news. Like there would be
Yeah! Well, maybe not in this New York City, because it seems like it's like the Spider-Man 2 game. Just every couple of blocks, there's some horrible crime happening.
It's at least on page like 30.
Let's say again.
It's at least on page like 30. Like another crime.
I do like thematically what we're doing with, or maybe I should just say symbolically, what we're doing with all the posters with Mary Jane's face on them. I like that I don't like her in this movie overall, but I like this on paper. I like that we open with like the object of his desire that he can't have because he's, and for sympathetic reasons, right? Where he could have her, but he's as a superhero afraid that he'll get her killed. That classic thing, and so. It's a little while before we even see her, but she's like looming over him and is this presence before we get to her because of the giant poster that he sees every day. And he tells her that it's nice to get to see her every day, but it's more than bittersweet. He's kind of lying when he says that. So like that's kind of great. And then when he like literally nearly killed himself trying to get there, and then doesn't even get to see the show, and then is walking past the looming eyes of like 100 of her. That's really great.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. That's just really classic visual storytelling.
But all you had to do was contrive the action scene differently. Just say he hears those police sirens and he rolls his eyes and goes, "I guess I better go see what that is because power, responsibility, all that." And then he goes and stops that crime. Instead, it's his moped gets run over and he only doesn't die because he's Spider-Man. That would have happened to anybody else that was on that moped right then. And so it feels even more contrived because it's just, we can do that kind of thing to our hero. We know he's not going to die. McGuire
Well,
is
and because
really
it's a
good in
cool
this
shot. Like that is a place where Raimi's just showing off.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah, and I'm fine with it because that's the stuff that works for it. But from a story point of view, yes, it's causing issues.
you're throwing your characters under the bus and you're not writing them character driven.
Mhm.
McGuire is great in this scene.
Yeah, I agree. And I've come to a place where I've just kind of settled. Like, Maguire's not what I see of a Spider-Man, but for these movies, he's fine.
That's where I am with it too.
Yeah, I've just kind of settled into that place.
I used to say kind of miscast, and now I'm like, I think I just fundamentally disagree with what that character looks like.
Sure.
With Raimi, and I don't just mean in the face. I just mean like attitude wise. Raimi's Peter Parker is real passive and lets stuff happen to him, and that's just not Spider-Man to me.
No, I agree. It's crazy to me that it took till Homecoming to have a Spider-Man movie that's driven by Peter's choices.
Yeah. Okay, let me read these super chats real quick. Thank you guys for your patience. Chewbacca's Lover, $5 super chat. As a kid, I was invested in the romance. It not holding up hurt my feelings. As much as I love this movie, I can't defend it, even though I tried for a while.
Sure, I mean, I thought, Peter and MJ were cool when I was a kid. Now I at least have the comic version. Like I can enjoy that. And now I have MJ and Paul, so I can enjoy that even more.
And I was nearly an adult when that first movie came out, so I was already seeing the the blemishes in it. I already had issues with it from the beginning, and as always, I don't mean to just be like it's not like the comics, so it's wrong. But I think you're already off on a weird foot when you have his interest in her because she's the girl next door.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was already a very strange introduction for that character, so it's a different dynamic, and so now she's a different character than she is in the comics, and I don't think, and he just never won me over on those changes, which felt somewhat arbitrary, and like he was trying to I'm talking about Raimi, just trying to relate more to a general audience with that, and it's also to Smallville. Like even before you get the Smallville writers with this movie, you've already got the Clark Kent, Lana Lang, they're next door, he's obsessed with her, she doesn't even notice him thing, and the only reason he seems to be enamored with her is because she's there and attractive. Like they also don't have anything in common. I never really saw the chemistry between them. And there's scenes, there's moments where I see the chemistry between the actors.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I don't think they have especially great chemistry. They're not Hemsworth and Portman bad, but like they're not great.
And even that on paper, I understand a little bit more, like why those characters would like each other.
Oh yeah, I'm just talking about like the actual chemistry.
Yeah, no, I know, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm saying like here, it's like it's not great chemistry, and also I don't get it on paper. I don't know why these two people care about each other.
MJ also kind of changes halfway through that first movie, so like it's also awkward in that place. Yes.
No, that's absolutely right. Mm. I like the way Franco was playing the scene.
Yeah.
He's got this, I don't want to say sadistic quality, but I love how, like selfish and just about the fame and money it is, and I never appreciated why he's so superficial. And I really latched onto that this last viewing, where I'm like, oh, he's like that because he's trying to be his father, and it's all about the fame and the glory, and then like I said, Doc Ock is a reinvention of Green Goblin, where he's the mentor that deserves to be the mentor.
Yeah, he's almost like a good version of Norman Osborn.
Yeah, he actually has his heart in the right place in the first place. Well,
and then it's cool that you have, essentially Norman Osborn, but if he started off good and he's being funded by Harry, like he's also connected to Harry.
Yeah.
Where he's almost like an ideal version of Norman.
And then you have, but possibly misguided. There is this big question for me as to, and I think I know which way the movie is trying to go with this. By the way, that's Jin from Lost at all. He was getting real minor parts during this period and became a big TV actor after this. Yep.
Yeah.
And was on the reboot of Hawaii Five-0 for 8-9 years.
He's in Hellboy 2019.
Oh, is he? I've only seen that once. I didn't remember. He's in a lot of stuff.
Oh yeah, I know exactly.
I like him a lot.
And then you have Picard's babe from Insurrection.
From Insurrection, yeah. And another
in this movie.
And another Picard connection is one of the drafts that enough was kept of that his name had to stay on story, even though he was totally rewritten, was Michael Chabon, who was brought in to showrun first season of Picard and promptly left.
Oh, that's funny.
This is a very Sam Raimi shot.
Oh, the glass? Absolutely.
Yeah, like I always complain about the really violent scene with the arms after this as being like out of a different Raimi movie, not really belonging here. But I never give it enough credit that there are shots like that in other places in the movie.
Yeah, and I've always had these are cool Raimi scenes, but I don't want them in Spider-Man movies. And it's the same thing with Tobey, where at this point I've just settled into it, and like they are good scenes on their own. And I think they work fine.
That particular scene, it never set right with me, where I was like, I don't know why he would just stop everything and put
Evil Dead scene
in the middle, and then listening to that commentary today, and I've listened to that before. I must have known this at one time, but I'd forgotten it. The reason that scene is like it is because it was the first thing they shot, and it was originally made as a concept reel for what they could do with the arms. And Raimi, and they did enough with it. Raimi ended up deciding to just use it in the movie. And that's why it's so separated from the rest of the film, because they hadn't even... I mean, obviously they had the tone from the first movie, but they hadn't started making anything yet. They hadn't really settled in on a tone yet.
Yeah, like they didn't even, I guess, know what Doc Ock would even really look like.
Yeah, or if this movie would be closer in tone to the first movie, or have like a Batman Returns kind of switch.
Well, now that you say that,
a lot darker. And I don't know that he ever had that thought, but given that they made this scene I wonder if he was thinking that, like, maybe we'll make a darker movie.
Well, and it makes me wonder, like, you know, if you made this now, like, this scene could have been just a clip they put on YouTube as, like, the first thing we see, you know, as, like, the teaser.
Let me read the super chat from Fella 999. He says, "I honestly love this MJ. She's a grounded portrayal of a woman in that environment with realistic human dreams, emotions, and conflicts. The romance is naturally messy. Now we don't even attempt romance." Well, I agree with that last part, or that we don't do enough romance in things these days. That seems to be starting to turn around a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with that. My issue
good.
with the romance is it's way too Smallville. Like, it's too CW.
And again, I've never been able to articulate this properly, I don't think. The big takeaway I had this time with it, like, I think I've refined my thoughts on it, Austin. The issue is she doesn't come alive as a real character to me. So when he says the relationship is naturally messy, it is natural that the relationship is messy. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like I have to change the words around to agree with the sentiment. It isn't that for me, respectfully. It's that she's a plot device, like so many things, to make Peter's life as terrible as possible. And then we'll wend it back around at the end so that he finally earns his chance at happiness, because he tries to find that balance between his superhero life and his personal life. And he can't have that before that. And that's also why we have the metaphor of his powers getting messed up. And I just feel like she's often kind of petty about things, and there aren't enough consequences for those actions for her. So, like, the movie either is with her on some of that and thinks the way she's acting is okay, or it doesn't care that she's acting that way because she's not a real character. That's how it feels a lot in scenes to me, where I just feel like she's kind of, and again, she's maybe a little bit more reasonable. I'll throw a couple examples out. She's a little more reasonable if only we were sure that she didn't have any clue whatsoever that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. But she does. So as soon as you have that, and as soon as she confirms it again at the end of the movie, that was a big trailer shot. And that was a poster, too.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But it's a big... I really respect Raimi, by the way, for letting Molina be shirtless as much as he is in this movie without being, like, super buff.
Yeah, I like that he's like a dad bod supervillain.
Yeah, and like,
because Doc Ock doesn't need to be especially muscular.
No, and he worked out real hard for this movie. Apparently, like, he's not gross looking, but he's
he's not like heavily obese.
He's not built. He's not a specimen. Like, he looks like Doc Ock.
He's not on steroids.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
No, I've always appreciated that too.
It's a great look.
Yeah. No, and I like how much we go to Universal Monsters with Doc Ock visually.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now that you said that with that proof of concept thing with the tentacle scene, like, that scene's way cooler knowing that, I think.
Me too, which is why, like, its placement in the movie, like, I still have the same issue I always had with it, but I respect it more now, knowing that. But yeah, I'll just finish that thought real quick about the romance. I just feel like if I could be sure that she didn't know he was Peter Parker through all of that, a little bit more understandable the way she's responding to him, but she has to know that there's a really good chance that the reason he's not showing up to things is because he's being Spider-Man. And she's also not allowing him to like just do that and figure things out for himself. And she's like expecting him to be really proactive with getting into a romance with her, when the end of last movie he said, look, we're gonna have to just be friends. And if she got that he was Spider-Man, she would know why. I mean, more of my issue is that it just doesn't seem consistent with what that cliffhanger was. 3 massively has that problem with stuff where it feels like a sequel to a different movie,
Sure.
kind of like Rises.
We can't do third movies well.
We'll talk more about that as we get to some of those things, but
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I really like this scene visually. It's almost like a Gollum thing, but there's also, like I said, just very universal monsters and how we're shooting it, and especially that part where he like rises up.
That's a terrific point.
It's so cool.
Okay, so let me ask you. Let me lay out my dilemma about Doc Ock.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so my dilemma is, I can't decide entirely if the idea is that Doc Ock is misguided, and even though his heart's in the right place in trying to create renewable energy for everyone, which will become a go-to staple for superhero movies. We have a lot of superhero movie plots about renewable. Rises is another one of those.
I mean, Doc Ock is one of those good things that ruins everything moving forward. I don't know if he made either of our lists, but he is.
That face is amazing. He's so good.
Yeah,
like, it's just preposterous how good he is.
When there is stuff that reminds me of Willem Dafoe with Green Goblin, where a lot of what I'm liking about him is the performance.
Yeah, but as you know, I don't know if I want to say two-dimensional, but as like not ultra complex as it is as a quote-unquote character study, there is like a real guy there in a way there's not so much with Osborn. Like with Osborn, he becomes a cartoon character very quickly because he gets the vial like right away.
And here at least has a motivation through the whole movie.
And we get to spend a little bit of time with him. And like learn about him, and like you said, his motivations, and he feels like a real person, and he cares about people, and his relationship with his wife is really stable, and he's everything Peter wants to be. And that's great. And then it's really tragic, and again in kind of a Shakespearean way, when he loses all of that and he's the guy that Peter wants to be, which I'll just go ahead and get to this, which gets to my big question, which is the idea that he's misguided and is playing God, and that ultimately he's this tragic mirror for Spider-Man, where Spider-Man has power and responsibility, and Doc Ock, we think, is like at first that ideal personified, but he is in fact, it turns out, the opposite of it. Is it that, or is it that he's actually, with the exception of being stupid enough to put an inhibitor chip right out in the open where something could crack it? Because like I think honestly the only reason he gets the AI from the arms takes him over is because he was really stupid about where the inhibitor chip is. That's the big lesson he needs to learn, is just be careful where you put your inhibitor chip, kids. By the way, this scene looks more like it's right out of a 1960s comic book than anything else that's ever been put to film.
Absolutely. And this bank teller should go back to community college.
I've got to get to my Aunt May issue here in a second because it's in this scene. But
we're about to get the best Spider-Man quip on film, the "Here's your change."
Apparently, yeah, and he doesn't have a lot of other quips in this movie.
No, but you got one.
Well, like his Spider-Man is just played. I'm jumping all over the place. His Spider-Man is played so like conflicted and damaged that it's just not even appropriate for him to do a ton of that. Well, and I say that. I mean, like, Peter is by nature also kind of a brooding, damaged guy. You can have both. It's just the way McGuire plays it. It's hard to see it.
This scene is going to make no sense in like 5 minutes.
Why do you say that?
The Doc Ock with his arms on Spider-Man's head because they give him a stupid assassin blade in like 5 minutes. I hate Doc Ock's stupid assassin blade that he whips out like once and it never comes up again.
Oh, that's a really good point. Why would he even have that? Why would he have weapons on board?
No, it feels like they were like, we need a moment where he can like easily kill Spider-Man that Aunt May has to help him with.
Aunt May can try to, bash him over the head.
And that they never think about it before or after. Like,
oh my
it's
God.
Just included.
Well,
that's
maybe
the best part about No Way Home is that they break the stupid assassin blade.
Oh, I forgot they did that. Well, and yeah, that's dumb and inconsistent no matter how you slice it. But the only thing I can think of is maybe the AI evolved it. Like, maybe it built it into itself.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Like, I mean, yeah, there is that question of why would he even have that? But then
that woman screaming, like coming at us and screaming, is the most over the top thing in the movie, and I love it so much.
It's so ridiculous. I do miss one of the best things about Raimi's movies is that New York has actual personality.
It's a character,
and we get a little bit more of that in Homecoming than in some of the other movies, but never to this degree.
And this is still before Stan Lee gets like scenes.
Well, I think he was supposed to have dialogue in the first movie, and they cut it.
He was, yeah. But it still is that, even though he was supposed to get stuff in other things.
Yeah.
What is the first movie where he gets a full-on scene?
Is it 3? Because he gets like a speech in 3.
Yeah. Yeah, he gets the enough said speech.
Mm-hmm.
I think.
He probably has like dialogue before that, but I feel like that's the first real big. Here is a moment.
But yeah, so I'm going to finally try to finish this Doc Ock point. So I broke down that
to your bank point.
I broke. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. So I broke down the first thing. Is he misguided? Is it hubris? And then, or is it that Doc Ock is Spider-Man with also Parker luck, and that the point is that Peter needs to take risks just like he did. And the reason I say that is because it's maybe a little bit arbitrary. Like, what did he, besides the stupid inhibitor chip thing, what did Octavius really do wrong? Like, is it that he is just playing with power he doesn't understand? Is it that whole thing?
It's the Dr. Frankenstein thing, right? Where like he's messing with things that shouldn't be messed with. And
but the problem is it's arbitrary because we only say it shouldn't be messed with when it goes wrong. Like if it worked, now it's an achievement. Mm. You know what I mean? Now it's progress.
But it's also that you have that scene where Peter's like, "Oh, what if it goes wrong?" And Doc Ock's like,
"Right.
It's not gonna go wrong." Like, no, he's also not respecting the science.
No, that's true. But the problem is we only get that kind of one token moment with that. Mm-hmm. And like otherwise he's a really good parallel for Peter where Peter is by the middle of the movie choosing to not be Spider-Man anymore even though he has responsibility. Well, with Doc Ock's intellect, which is for him the stand-in for Peter Parker's power, mm-hmm. What is his responsibility?
What I was going to say is there may be like an awkward mixed message thing where Peter's saying he has no confidence in Doc Ock as he has too much.
Yeah. I could almost see, besides, and that's why I said earlier, I think the movie ultimately is leaning on the hubris side.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
And if you want to take any stock in this, that's confirmed by like Avi Arad and I think Sam Raimi both kind of using that word to describe him, or both talking about him like that. So they were thinking that when they made the movie. But just looking at the movie, but ignoring for a second that you do get that moment where Peter's like, I don't know, it's maybe a bad idea. Like maybe that should have been a lot more in the foreground because when you look at everything that happens, I kind of wonder what else Doc Ock was supposed to do. Like, is it possible that he eventually could have like being able to harness that power properly.
Hmm.
It
And I
starts
think
to,
the movie is saying he can't, but
right.
yeah.
It's nearly there. It's nearly there.
Needs to cook a little bit longer in the stove.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying with that.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. We should have cut MJ and just had more Doc Ocksians.
Yeah, just get rid of her
Doc
entirely.
Ock's the new love interest,
Well,
okay? That's what we're moving to.
I'll get some more super chats here in a second. Thank you guys for your support. The other thing I was going to mention with Mary Jane, the other issue the other reason I find her really unsympathetic with this is she's also like kind of a jerk to John Jameson just in because of her like awkward situation with Peter Parker. We play all of that just too over the top, I think. Like I think I'm okay with, again, especially if you have the scene put back in the movie that drives home she's making a mistake. She's being like both insecure and really kind of selfish in throwing herself at another guy she doesn't really care about. So the movie knows that, it's just not in the movie, which is, or it used to know that. So that's unfortunate. I'm kind of okay with her accepting the marriage proposal.
Hmm.
Again, the timing of it is intentionally really convenient in turning the knife even harder with Peter. I'm okay with that. I mean, the sheer amount of these coincidences, I guess I could complain about. This is not a super realistic movie. Like overall, I'm okay. Some of the individual contrived moments are irritating to me, but like all of these things coming crashing down on him at the same time, that's classic Stan Lee stuff. I'm okay with that, but when you get to the end of the movie and she's stringing John Jameson along, and then leaves him at the altar when she already knows that Peter is Spider-Man and could have left John Jameson well before they got to the church, I've got huge issues with that.
It's super unlikable. That's kind of her character throughout this movie. Is just she's stringing Peter along and she's stringing Jameson along, and it's just not likable at all.
It's real guilt trippy, and yeah.
Yeah.
So when Fella says like, well, it's realistic, relationships are messy. Again, I just need the movie to not. I like she's got to be a sort of a bad guy for a while, and then like learn to get over herself, if that's the way we're gonna play it. And because the problem for me is she never gets very mature past that.
You could also focus more on her insecurities. Like, you were talking about there was one scene where they mentioned that, but you could have delved more into that, and maybe she just craves a normal life and is
Yeah,
just kind of trying to find that anywhere she can.
sure,
And it's
absolutely.
just,
She
it's
needs
not
to be.
enough there. Like, it's too just CW drama.
That's what I think. She needs to be played more tragic.
Yeah.
And if the point is she's pathetic and then she learns from that, sure.
Hmm.
But
Exactly.
they cut out the one scene that kind of played it that way, and that still wouldn't have gone far enough.
No, because it should be more of her character as opposed to just a scene.
Matthew Bass, $10 super chat. Thanks, man. Part of my problem with this Peter is that too much of his personality / motivation seems to revolve around MJ in a very unhealthy way that the film isn't aware of, and it doesn't help that she's awful.
Yep.
That's always been, yeah, that's always been how I feel about it.
This Peter is just a Peter who really lacks motivation.
And again, I don't mean to spin my wheels and say the same stuff over and over again, but and it doesn't help that I don't. It feels kind of contrived that they're into each other in the first place.
Hmm. Exactly.
Like at the very least, make me root for them harder than I was in the first movie. She's better in the first movie.
Hmm. And now, in retrospective, I think I like these movies a little bit more too. Where I have a worse version of this, where I think the Insomniac games are way too inspired by the elements of these I don't like, and take them further.
Sure. I'll also complain that the second Insomniac game should not have been called Spider-Man 2, because now if I'm looking for images or information about this movie, I have to specify that I'm looking for the movie.
When I mentioned the Spider-Man 2 game earlier, and someone in chat was like, which one?
Yeah, God, that's annoying.
The game for this movie. Because the
At
game for this movie is
least,
awesome.
yeah, like, at least the Batman game said Arkham, and so it separates it from everything else.
Well, it's Marvel's Spider-Man 2, Cap.
Yeah.
That's the closest you get.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and
Isn't that
that's what
helpful?
people are searching out in Google image search. Interesting factoid, originally, and I don't know why they didn't go with this, this movie was supposed to be called Amazing Spider-Man.
Really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
I didn't either. I learned that today.
So would we have just continued like the different monikers then?
That's what I wanted to happen after the actual Amazing Spider-Man movie. I
Because
wanted that.
3 would then be Web of, right?
I didn't want the sequel to be Amazing Spider-Man 2. I wanted it to be Spectacular or something.
Or like Home of Spider-Man.
Yeah, or you could do, like, if you wanted to do a really grounded character piece where Peter was in costume exactly 3 times in the whole movie, you make that movie Peter Parker Spider-Man. There's a lot of cool stuff you could do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so Austin, talk about your resistance to this subplot.
Yes. So my thing with the powers, I guess it's I have issues with how we started off with just I wish we went into it a little bit more into, why now, in that Peter Parker wasn't especially confident in the first movie, so like why is it all coming down now? But on a rewatch, I guess there is a lot more happening to him now. My main issue is more so how it's resolved. I
Yeah.
don't like how we take it out of Peter's hands. And
And it becomes all about Mary Jane.
yes,
And I don't know
but
how you
it's
feel about
also-
that.
It's not Peter being like, okay, I need to become Spider-Man again. It's Doc Ock being like, hey, I'm gonna kill your girlfriend unless Spider-Man comes out. It's taken way too much out of his hands. There's no choice there.
Yeah, you want it to be an honest to God opportunity for change. Honestly, I kind of wish telling Mary Jane he was Spider-Man was also a choice he has to make, instead of her just finding it out at the end with his mask off.
Yeah.
Because I feel like his character arc is better served by that. That's not me rewriting the movie. Like, the story they're telling.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. And part of me just wishes we maybe didn't go the power losing route and found some other way to deal with it.
Yeah, well, and I think they already had a better way to deal with it, and they got rid of it. Which is, they were supposed to have a Black Cat subplot, and I think that would have given...
so it's the Spider-Man 2 thing.
Yes.
Like the game.
And they
I've
talk...
always liked how the game handles it, but it's a video game, so it's not deep.
Sam Raimi talks about that in his... and Avi Arad in their commentaries about how they had a whole Black Cat subplot. They decided that it just made the movie too long, and it took too much of the impetus off of Mary Jane because they're obsessed with that relationship, and I don't think it works.
Mm-hmm.
What
I like about the game is that it's he has to pick between his 2 lives, and you have Jane representing Peter, Black Cat representing Spider-Man, and he's kind of caught between them, and he ultimately finds the balance.
Yeah, and that's all you needed with this. That's why Black Cat could take the place of this silly losing powers subplot, and it would make sense. It doesn't have to be a silly conceit I have to buy.
Exactly, yeah. I would like that a lot better.
Because, as you say, all it had to be is very early in the movie. If not, it's an already established relationship. Peter is kind of putting, like, everything into Spider-Man, and he is, like, forgetting or not handling, like in this movie, his regular life very well, because he's focusing so much on Spider-Man. And so his personal life is falling apart, but his Spider-Man life is going more or less okay. Not like Spider-Man 3 okay, but, more or less okay. And obviously the shot is beautiful, and it's so cool that they did it.
Yeah, I like that the eyes hold, too.
Yeah, it's so good.
Black. It's like the Fox X. And then here's your favorite sequence.
Yeah, the freeze frame at the end of this is one of the funniest things.
I also like the triple shot of him getting up. It's so cheesy and just in a very endearing way.
I think it works because, and the freeze frame I always thought was going a little too far.
Yeah.
And like I can't decide if I'm laughing at it or with it. Like in the commentary, they talked about how everybody in the audience is laughing. I'm like, do you guys think they're laughing with you or at you though? That's the thing.
I think
Because
Sam Raimi is the king of writing that line, so I'll give it to Sam Raimi.
it works. It might be to your, depending on your taste, how far it works. But a lot of this works because Peter is this much of a dork. And if you take Spider-Man away from him, this is the guy he is, which is why he's got the emo dance thing in 3 with Venom, and that's taking it way, way too far.
Mm-hmm.
But you can see how even that is, like from his perspective and kind of consistent with his character. Although, on the other hand, I would think that being Spider-Man for a while, he would maybe just get a little cooler and hipper, which is typically what we do with him in other stuff and in comics, where like he's a dork in high school and then he kind of grows up a bit and gets more fleshed out, and it's like he made no emotional progress if you take Spider-Man away from him. That's what's weird about it. So, like, yeah, it's in character, but it is kind of weird that he hasn't evolved. Like, even Billy and Power Rangers stopped wearing plaid shirts and glasses by season 3.
Well, and to a weird degree, Spider-Man in this movie is almost what 616 Black Suit is, where, like, he's just always tired, too. Like, there's that part that Kirk Connors is like, like, when you do show up, you're sleeping. I'm like, guys.
But real quick, I was going to say with Black Cat, you just have Peter, or as Spider-Man, like you said, he's with Black Cat. That represents that part of his personality and the mantle, that side of his life. And then Mary Jane represents the other side, and he has to choose between them. And he learns by the end of the movie that even though he's taking a risk by letting Mary Jane know that he's Spider-Man, and again, I think he should let her know.
I agree.
He can still be in the suit and have a regular life and have a girlfriend that is not a costumed vigilante like he is, and she can help center him and let him live in both of those worlds. And that would perfectly take the place of the power loss plot.
Yeah, exactly. And I've always thought that just based on the game.
That's why she's there, because that's almost what they did.
So tragic.
Okay, so we talked over it, but the scene that I've come around on is the Uncle Ben thing.
Breaks up with Uncle Ben.
I don't even completely know what my whole deal was with that. I've always complained about it, and watching it again this time, I'm like, I have a little bit of a reservation about it. But my issue before, I guess, was I don't usually like personifying that kind of thing because we often treat it like a delusion or something. And like it works with Harry Osborn at the end with his father because he really is losing his mind. But with this, it's like it's like, okay, you're just a regular kid like talking to your uncle. But maybe I remember the scene wrong or something because it's all internalized. It's all in his head. Mm-hmm. We just go into his eyes. And I think when you have a loved one that's died, you do. A lot of people do kind of talk to them like they might talk to God, right?
When I've had this kind of like in my head, like imagining a conversation thing, and with that, I really like that they're in the car and there's nothing around them, like it's completely whited out.
Yeah,
because I think that helps convey that. I think it's a good visual way of representing that. I've definitely been in that position.
No, it does work. You're right. Like it's surreal enough where it's existential.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. The only reservation I have about it, and I don't even think this is really a problem, but it's just a question, is Peter a little, if it's all in his head, and we're not saying that he's talking to the actual ghost of Uncle Ben, right? Mm-hmm. Is Peter internally too wise because Uncle Ben is saying exactly what the real Uncle Ben would be saying? And maybe not, because it just suggests that Peter, in deep down, gets what Uncle Ben was saying to him, and he's ignoring it right now. I think it probably works.
I think it's more that. I think it's just he knows Uncle Ben. Like, it's just he knows what he would say in that situation, and he knows that he's being wrong.
So I will never understand why Jameson in the Spider-Man suit was cut, because it's like
I was
20
about to say, you're
seconds.
about to say that you'll never understand why that was cut, right?
Well, it's hilarious,
It's
and
really funny.
it would have been a lot of people's favorite moment. I don't know why you cut that.
It is only like 20 seconds, you're right, and you get that great shot where it backs out and you see the other characters reacting to it,
Yeah,
which is
it's great.
it's a great scene.
Well, and it's part of a montage. I don't get why you cut that.
Mhm.
It feels like the only thing I can figure is that Raimi decided it was a bridge too far.
It was too
It
silly.
was just too silly. But like for this movie, you just had that freeze frame like
Well, now you have
3 or 4 minutes
thugs
ago.
beating up Mickey Mouse and Peter's just reacting.
Yeah, and that's that classic Stanley moment, or not Stanley moment, but because like Stanley had left the book by then, but with Spider-Man No More, where he comes up on uh, crimes and he just ignores them, but he feels really bad
Spider-Man
about
No
it.
More is in those Stanley Run, I think.
Oh, is it? I thought it was past that.
I think that's like in
I'm
the
rusty.
40s or 50s, maybe 60s. I think that's under Stanley. I could be wrong.
I'm rusty, folks.
It's been a while since I've read Romita and Lee. But
I'm gonna gripe about Spider-Man No Way Home for just a second, though. No Way Home. I'm gonna gripe about Spider-Man No More for a secend.
is it that Peter comes up with it and then the Daily Bugle also comes up with it?
Yes, so we can move on now.
It's just like a reference. It's dumb.
Yeah,
but
I don't like that. Like, it's fine that the newspaper would say that as a reference, but why does he have to say it out loud first?
But he says it like 4 times too.
You know, it's sort of like Death of Superman things where everybody independently comes up with Doomsday. Like, stop it. Okay, so I'm going to complain about the Aunt May thing during this really emotional, tender,
Oh, the bank scene?
heart-wrenching scene because we didn't get to it
Well,
during
we
the bank
did say
thing.
earlier that this is a wonderful scene. Like it's perfect.
So
So
Mary,
go ahead with your complaint.
so Mary Jane should know or be like 78% sure that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. Aunt May has no idea whatsoever, like no clue, and only starts to like Spider-Man now because he saved her.
Mhm.
There should be a scene where after that whole thing, she goes to Peter and goes, "You coward! Why did you run from me at the bank?" Like, it's preposterous. She goes, "Don't leave me!" And then Spider-Man shows up to help. I don't think at this point she is already starting to put that together. She clearly knows or has a pretty good indication of it by the time I think by the time we get the moving scene.
Yeah,
Or
by that
is
point,
the idea supposed to be that somehow dealing with him in costume, she's figured it out?
what could be a mix of that and this, like both of them together.
Okay, well, again, it's a communication issue in this movie is filled with that. Either way, because if you're not going to have Aunt May tell him that because she knows she thinks he's probably Spider-Man, at least Peter should apologize for it. At least he should be like, and come up with an excuse. Aunt May, I'm really sorry that I left you to get kidnapped by a supervillain and get dropped off a building not once but twice.
I just imagine
Because I was saving my own skin. I have a really good excuse.
and obviously it's not in that cut, but like you watch the 2.1 cut and she walks up the stairs and they hold on it for a second and then Peter gets up and he like shouts up to the stairs like, and by the way, sorry about leaving you at the bank. Bye. And then he leaves.
People complain that Tobey Maguire cries too much in these movies. You cannot lob that at him in this scene.
No, and I mean
It is correct in this scene.
the crying thing's weird because like sure, but also in the first movie it's like he cries a lot because his uncle just died, and then maybe in 3 it's less justified, but all the Spider-Men cry a lot. Like it's weird that we specifically throw it at Toby. It's probably because he's got like the sexy cry where it's like always the one tear.
Yeah, I don't think it happens with MCU Spider-Man as much.
MCU
Does he
Spider-Man
cry?
cries a little bit, yeah.
Okay. Dan Schneider
He at
five.
least cries in every movie.
Dan Schneider $5 super chat. Oh, I've always liked that this machine is also octopus arms.
Yes, I've always liked that too. It's the octopus hand, but with an extra finger.
It's great. Oh, and you know what I like about the AI claws,
What's
or not
that?
claws, but arms. They have this kind of like small sense of personality where they open up
They
like a
little
puppet.
mouth, yeah.
Like they look like they've got mouth. They look like velociraptor mouths. Like it's really
They do.
cool.
They do. But with the machine, that's got to be intentional. Like
Oh
it's
yeah,
the
absolutely.
power of the sun in the palm of his hand, and it's the octopus hand.
Yeah. No, that's obvious. That's obviously on purpose.
Yeah.
It's great.
No, it's perfect.
The blade that pierced his body
The assassin blade of Doc Ock
came
pierced
from his
his-
gilder. Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. The children's storybook for this movie spoiled the whole damn thing before it came out. What was Avi Arad thinking? Hope someone got fired for that. I want to read that because I think that's true of a lot of movies where, like, more or less you get the kind of the synopsis of it, but a lot of storybooks will just kind of, I mean, that's true. A lot of storybooks will just give you like sort of the basic premise and then not the ending of the thing.
I think junior novelization of Homecoming, MJ is Vulture's daughter, which is part of why I was shocked by that twist in the movie.
I also think it's weird, and I don't know if we do this anymore, that novelizations used to come out like a week or two before the movie. And so if you really wanted to know the ending, you could just go grab like the Peter David Fantastic Four paperback was like that. Like
I think the Begins game was like that too.
Oh, it's crazy. Like you could get the ending.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think it's weird that we release scores early and like you can hear the movie before you see it. Like that's weird to me. I've never done that.
Yeah,
I know you and other people will listen to the music before you see the movie. I can't deal with that.
It depends what it is. Like I did that for the Batman just because I was excited to hear that score. But for the most part, I won't. It's more weird when the titles spoil things, like the Phantom Menace one, where it's like Qui-Gon's funeral.
So well, and this is neither here nor there, but my favorite storybook is the Rises one because it tries to like color the violence with that as much as it can, but it just doesn't work. It's so funny. Anyway, okay, real quick, let me just say, the one thing you lose that's kind of sad, but I don't think it's worth the whole thing, if you don't have the loss of powers part, is seeing Peter Parker put his life on the line when he doesn't have his powers, going to save a little girl from the fire. Like, it's a really good scene.
This is a really good scene.
It just the way we get there doesn't work.
But then I think it also hurts it because this is Peter deciding he's got to do the right thing again. But then this isn't the reason he's going to get his powers back. It's going to be because MJ gets kidnapped.
Yeah, and that's another thing that thematically anyway, as a metaphor almost works, but they don't quite get me there. So I think what the idea is supposed to be, Austin, and you're right, it's arbitrary when it starts. Because he's already got confidence issues. So what it is thematically, like you have to take it out of any kind of story logic is the problem. Thematically, it's simply he's not choosing one side or the other, and he can't figure out how to blend them. So the place where he finally gets his powers back is when, and like whether you think this is a dumb idea or not, is when he puts his superhero side and his personal life side together by being Spider-Man to save the woman he loves. That's what it thinks it's doing.
That's what it thinks it's doing? Okay. I mean, I guess when you put that on paper, like, sure enough, I guess.
That's what it thinks it does. But what makes it kind of messy is he chooses one over the other in deciding not to be Spider-Man, and he still can't get his powers back. And so, like, but at the beginning of the movie, he's mostly being Spider-Man, so he gets to have his powers.
Hmm.
So, like, there's no story logic to it whatsoever.
I also this scene has like a T2 thing where it's sequelitis, but in a way where we're flipping what happened in the first movie. That makes it a more interesting scene than just we're doing the same thing again. Where you have Spider-Man rescue the baby in the fire in the first movie, and now you have Peter do it, and they're very different.
Yeah, well, and in the first movie, he goes into a burning building to rescue an old lady that turns out to be Green Goblin. So, like, he actually gets to save somebody this time.
Hmm. Well, no, he saves the baby before that.
Oh, that's right, that's right.
But then we should have had Doc Ock dressed as an old lady just in this fire for no reason. But he was the one that didn't make it out.
These scenes where characters are talking to themselves shouldn't work, but they kind of do.
Yeah, I think the movies are melodramatic enough to make that work.
Yeah.
There's places like when we get to 3 where his monologuing goes too far, but I think it's fine when we're just laying things out like this.
The other problem with the losing powers plot, besides the fact that that's a place where Raimi is looking way too much at Donner, because that whole thing doesn't work in Superman 2 either.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking it from that, and I mean, there's more story logic there. Like you get what the conceit is, but then when Superman gets his powers back, you don't know how that works because we're told that he can't get them back, and then he just gets them back. So like, it's the same thing in that way, where like we can't stick the landing on it, but this can't start it either.
Well, it's been so long, I can't remember how it resolves in Annual 1, because this is the Sinister Six story where he loses his powers.
Yeah, well, and I was going to suggest a way that the power loss thing could maybe work better if we actually went full tilt and did the Man Spider thing.
Oh, that would have been crazy.
Because in the theater, I thought that's where we were going, like, and we're looking at stories from around that period. So I'm like, okay, we're doing we're combining stuff. We're doing Spider-Man No More, and we're doing Man Spider, and then we're not doing Man Spider because it doesn't have anything to do with genetics at all. He's just losing his powers because it's a confidence issue. And I'm like, well, what if you had an actual in-story conceit? It's still a conceit, but what if you had this kind of like pseudoscience explanation that it is psychosomatic, and something about the emotional stress that he's dealing with sets off a mutation? Then you could do it.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know if I'd want it to go to Man Spider in this movie, but maybe.
Well, you could set up Man Spider for another movie. What I mean is,
oh, it's almost like a Dark Phoenix
yeah,
thing.
the idea is it's psychosomatic. So, once he gets his confidence back, or like loses that emotional stress, however you want to look at it, he is able to get his powers back, and he thinks everything's okay. But then what he doesn't realize is that he's exacerbated this mutation that was slowly happening anyway, so he is still going to turn into Man Spider. That's maybe how you do it. That also sounds messy, but not as messy as this.
They should do Man Spider in the 4th MCU Spider-Man.
They should. And it still sounds better than what what his original script was.
Oh, really?
Do you know about that?
No, I don't know anything about that.
I'm just gonna read the synopsis of what that script was. Are you ready?
Yeah.
In September of 2002, I'm reading this on Wiki. Michael Chabon was hired to rewrite, and he was rewriting David Cap. And
okay,
then
the first one.
Yeah, and then Goff and Miller were already brought on to do story, but I don't know if they ever wrote a full draft, but they don't have script writing credit. They just have story credit. I'm still going to assume that all the Smallville type stuff came from them, but they didn't actually write any dialogue for this movie, as far as I know. Anyway, Uh, Chabon's draft had a younger Doc Ock who becomes infatuated with Mary Jane. His mechanical limbs use endorphins to counteract the pain of being attached to his body, which he enjoys. When he injures two muggers on a date, this horrifies Mary Jane, and in the resulting I love the look on your face right now. In the resulting battle with Spider-Man, his tentacles are fused together, and the fusion begins to kill him. In the script, Octavius is the creator of the genetically altered spider from the first film, and gives Peter an antidote to remove his powers. This means when Octavius is dying with his tentacles, he wants to extract Spider-Man's spine to save himself, which would lead to an alliance with Harry Osborn.
So can this film get just an honorary legend rating just for not being bad? That's ridiculous.
We dodged a bullet there, folks.
I like the image of MJ just going on dates with Doc Ock. He's got the arms, and they're sitting in a restaurant.
Yeah, he just has them.
He just has them. It's like, Otto, don't you know it's rude to not take your arms off when you walk into a restaurant?
We have a dress code here, sir. We have a very strict dress code. Okay, so the other thing I was going to say about the losing powers plot in this is piggybacking off of something you said earlier, Austin. And this feels real typical now, but we hadn't done as much of this at this point. But it falls into that trap of making a sequel where your hero still feels like he's not quite the hero yet. Where you've got to parallel scenes from the first movie and get us back to that origin place.
Well, I think that's why I found it boring as a kid. Was like, I understand that the first movie has to be an origin, and then I get to the second one and it's like, oh, but I don't get to live with Spider-Man.
Well, and it kind of feels like that whole thing is contrived just so we can get this moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think because 3 for a long time was my favorite when I was like 10, and I think that's part of that too, is that's the only one where it's just Spider-Man the whole movie.
Yeah, but then I still lob that complaint about that movie because it still wants to get back to origin territory by retconning it. Yeah.
And it's awful.
It doesn't have the same thing that this does, where arguably, it's not as bad as some other things, but arguably it still has a little bit of that, he's not really Spider-Man yet. We're going to see him full-on become it this time. Or he sort of is, but we got to backtrack him so we can do more origin stuff. And it doesn't help that the Mary Jane stuff also feels backtracked from where we were at the end of last movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
What if, and yes, I am kind of rewriting the movie when I suggest this, but what if Spider-Man just like comes to Mary Jane in the middle of the movie and like tells him he's Spider-Man? How much more interesting would the movie have been? Or what if she confronts him about it?
She pulls a gun on him?
Well, no. But what if she's just like, look, Peter, I know why you can't make my play.
No, but think about how much more interesting it would be if MJ just whipped out a gun at Peter.
And that's another place where it feels like that Smallville thing, right? Of we just have to stay in the status quo.
Mm-hmm.
And so characters aren't communicating and saying the natural things they would be saying. This is the scene where if she hasn't,
this is like the most CW scene.
If she hasn't completely lost me, or if she's not totally lost me, she's now completely lost me. Because this whole movie, I'm thinking, okay, we've just retconned the ending of last movie, right? Where she kisses Peter and goes, oh my god, he's Spider-Man. And then seems to have completely forgotten that because she's so unreasonable to him if she does know that. And then now it's, oh, I gotta make out with my boyfriend upside down to see if I feel the same way I do. Like, how superficial is that? Like, yeah, she's awful.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Then she's going to string him along and leave him at the altar. She's awful.
And even if we're talking about the first movie, her stupid strawberry blonde hair in this one looks awful. So just awful all around.
Okay,
this is one of the stupidest scenes in the movie.
I want to talk. Yeah, I want to talk for a second about the difference between motivation and method, right? Because in the first movie, Green Goblin very quickly loses motivation. Where you're just like, why is he doing anything he's doing? He wanted his board dead. He got that done at the before the second act was over, or like the very beginning of the second act.
I think he might get that done before you really get a good shot of him.
even in costume, and then after that, he's just a real typical villain where you can't decide if he wants to rule the world or destroy it. And then, I'm being hyperbolic. Then with this movie, you've got a villain with a very clear motivation, where he just wants to prove that his experiment will work, and his arms want that even more than he does. By the way, I'm not totally sure why the AI is on about that. I don't know if it's because they're plugged into his brain and it's heightening what he wants, and they're trying to give him that, or if it's they were programmed to do a job, and by God, they're going to do it. I don't know which of those it is.
Yeah, I'm not really sure either. I don't know if the movie fully knows.
I also don't care that much. Like, that really doesn't even matter all that much.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Because I care a lot more about what Doc Ock wants, and that is clear. But his method for getting it is ridiculous. And I've talked about this before, but I love complaining about it. Because Harry Osborn says, you've got to go get Peter Parker. Don't hurt him.
He just whips a car at him.
Peter Parker is the only person that can tell you where Spider-Man is. Oh, I know. I'll throw a car at him. And he doesn't know that Peter is Spider-Man. So you can't even use the excuse of, well, he figured Peter would duck it. And even if he did, why is that the way you're going to try to get him? Like, I sort of get the train thing, but it's way too over the top. I guess his idea is tire Peter out to the point where he doesn't even have to fight him. He can just then grab his limp body, which is what happens. But that was like death-defying. He easily could have not even made it out of that alive. So that's also kind of dumb.
Yeah. No, I feel like, because this scene is just done to look cool. And
that's it.
To its credit, it looks cool, but it's so stupid.
Well, can we just say how impressive a lot of this is that it holds up as well as it does?
Yes. There's a couple things CG-wise that I think don't look great.
No, and things we just accepted at 04 because of the limitations of the technology.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is they look good for the time.
But then there's other things that look good for right now. When that car comes through there, that is all CG, and it looks great.
The end shot of Doc Ock drowning looks really good, and that's all CGI. But not
now
only that,
the shot of him taking the fusion reactor and dropping does not look good.
Yeah.
That bit is hilarious.
Yeah. But not only the car thing, Cap, but he picks up Peter and then buries him under rubble. Like, this is just a regular guy. But he wants him to do something. Like,
no, it's like the movie momentarily forgets that he doesn't know that Peter's Spider-Man, even though his motivation for doing this is get Peter to tell him where Spider-Man is.
And it's only there for like the metaphorical thing of, okay, now he's complete. He's bursting out of the rubble. Like, he is fully himself now.
Spider-Man again, yeah. He's Super Shredder.
Exactly, he's Super Shredder, but in reverse. He broke out of the rubble.
But okay, so he's Shredder at the beginning of Ninja Turtles 2 when he throws his arm up.
Exactly.
Well, and the question is...
No, because if he were Super Shredder, he would have just died when Doc Ock did that.
So I guess he tells Peter... Because we were talking over this. Am I remember this right? Doesn't he just tell Peter, like I'm gonna take this girl, so Spider-Man's gotta come get me? Is that what it is?
Well, it's leverage. It's, you need to send Spider-Man because I've got your girlfriend. And I'm going to rip the flesh from her bones.
Fella puts in another $4.99 super chat. Thanks for the support, man. We are arguing, but I appreciate you. The only men in MJ's life before Peter were abusive, so she has this higher expectation of him based on how positively different he is.
But I don't think we're disagreeing on that,
too much
fella.
Credit.
Yeah, I don't think we're disagreeing on it. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier, where we just said we wish that was more in the forefront.
That's not communicated well enough.
Because you wouldn't even really know that if you hadn't seen the first film. Like, that's only if you've seen Spider-Man 1 and there's one scene where they're yelling at her.
Well, and is she upset with... Here's the thing. What's awkward about it for me is I spend the whole movie, like I said, thinking that she doesn't know he's Spider-Man, only to be told in the third act she probably has the whole time. Right? And you can't just say it's subconscious and she's not thinking about it, because she gives us that look at the end of the first movie that says, oh my god, epiphany. Like, you can't ignore that. So, the question is she mad at him for not making room in his life for her? Or is she mad at him for not telling her he's Spider-Man? I don't think the movie knows that. Because when we see her by herself it's almost like it's two different characters. When we see her by herself in her apartment and she's listening to Peter give her the answering machine message, and he says, he's talking about disappointing her, and she says bingo. In that moment, you think that she's talking about him not making time for her and not showing up. And she's upset because of all of the people in her life, including her deadbeat father, that have come to the play. It is that until maybe it isn't.
It's just all very muddled.
It's just too muddled. So yeah, I appreciate what Fella's saying on paper, like having a higher expectation of him. Yeah,
no, because I agree. Like, I want it to be more about that.
Yeah. But I don't think the movie is communicating that, and I also don't think the movie always knows that. Bob the Hun. Oh, we've got quite a few super chats here. $5 super chat. I always felt these movies were pulling more from 70s Spider-Man comics than the 60s, specifically with the New Yorkers and Jameson. That's a terrific point.
I mean, it's a bit of both. I think Raimi's pulling from both 60s and 70s, but I don't think he's really going to anything later than that. I think that just is his Spider-Man.
It's still more 60s on the characterization of Spider-Man side.
Yeah, and we're dealing with some of the 60s stuff, too. We'll get more of 70s with Harry in the next one. So this is a big thing, Cap.
Yeah.
With where we cut with 2.1 is Peter, when he jumps off that building, lands straight back on the train, and they fight for a little bit, and then he throws him off the train again. And that's one of the big cuts on the sequence.
Okay, so talk about your issue with the scene.
So my thing is, I think the scene's riveting. This is, of course, a lot of people's favorite action scene in a superhero movie. The second Doc Ock jumps off the train...
it was thrilling in a movie theater.
Oh, yeah.
Like, we haven't talked about how great of a ride this movie is, but yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful ride.
And I know it's obviously a hot take, but the second Doc Ock jumps off the train, I'm kind of out of the scene. Like, I think it goes on too far in that way. I just don't find him stopping the train as thrilling as their actual fight scene. But I know I'm very much in the minority on that.
Well, and I think that hinges on whether you're moved by, what happens with him and the New Yorkers at the end of this, which feels like kind of a nice payoff in a way to the end of the first movie.
Sure.
You mess with one of us, you mess with all of us. Where like they take that a lot farther, and the city, or at least these people on the train, are embracing him in a way that he didn't feel embraced before, which gives him more fuel and confidence to further embrace the role as both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, and that's symbolic of his not having his mask in this scene.
Yeah, it goes a little too far for me in like the Jesus pose when they're pulling him off, but I do like the city's finally embracing him thing. I do like that aspect of it. It's just all of it, I think, goes on a little too long.
Yeah, like I kind of like everything when he goes into the train better. The kid bringing him the mask.
Yeah, like I like all that stuff. It's just the sequence of him stopping the train is too long.
The guy that says he's no older than my kid, and all like that. That's all great. Those kids are Tobey Maguire's actual brothers.
Really interesting. This movie's got a couple good kid actor moments. Like you have that part earlier when he died, jumps over the car.
Yeah.
The guy, all
Oh
that
yeah,
stuff can be really
the kid on
annoying.
the kid on the street that says that's what my mom's always saying.
Yeah,
That's a
uh,
great that's a great delivery. That kid. I
yeah.
just never actually believed her.
And
It's
some of that
great.
stuff could be really annoying, but it works.
I like all the little like one liner moments from citizens in this movie.
Like I
Uh,
said, there was just New York had a real presence in Raimi's trilogy
and,
that we
and
never
a
got
lot of
back
that's
to.
the quotable stuff. Like he stole that guy's pizzas. Like I love that.
Yeah.
I love the he stole that guy's pizzas guy. I wonder if he's in anything else. I gotta look for that guy.
That guy's got to be somewhere. I know
He's
the
too
one guy in the
photogenic not to
sequence
get like a real part in something. He's great.
I know the one guy in the sequence is from The Sopranos, but I don't know about any of the other New Yorkers.
Oh, and see, now that you say that, I know exactly who that is, and I've never seen The Sopranos, but
The
obviously
like
that guy was
heavyset
in The
guy.
Sopranos. Yeah, he must have been.
Yeah. Oh, of
Sure.
course. I mean, who else would it have been? I can't say his character's name in this commentary, but let's just say it's big something.
Let me read some more super chats. Chewbacca's lover, $2 super chat. I think Elijah Dushku was supposed to be Black Cat. I forgot about that. That's really good casting. I wish we'd had that.
Oh, okay. I knew that was like a fan rumor thing, but I didn't know that was actually who they wanted.
If that's
Like
actually
a
true.
popular fan cast, I should say.
Yeah, well, because that was also a rumor for a long time with all female Ghostbusters, or not all female Ghostbusters. When there was a movie where they were going to have like a new cast of like a couple of girls and a couple of guys, she was supposed to be a Ghostbuster. But I also don't know if that was fan casting or if that was real.
She seems like one of those people that was in like every nerd's fan casting in like the 2000s.
Well, I love her. I wish she had gotten. I know you're not a Buffy person, but like Faith is my favorite character in that show, and like
When I drop off that show, like right when she's introduced, so I don't even really know her on that show. Like I've never really seen her in much.
sure, yeah, she's great, and Dollhouse is not a great show, but she's really good in it.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've heard it got a lot better when it got serialized, but I've still never watched the second season. I guess someday I should do that. Dan Schneider, $5 super chat. If they had that Black Cat subplot, all you would have heard is that he should have ended up with Black Cat instead of MJ. Well, you got to stick the landing with your MJ. You got to make me love
True.
her, and I just didn't.
That's
Yeah.
always the risk you run, though, when you introduce some other love interest.
No, absolutely. But all you have to do is make her. It's pretty easy though to make an audience, even with this MJ, arguably, to make it untenable, I should say, for him to be with Black Cat by simply going as off the page as you can. She's a crook, and she only cares about him in costume.
Yeah, and that's
Because
what the
that's
kid does.
inherently more toxic even than the relationship he has with Mary Jane in this.
Yeah.
You don't want to date a girl that will only sleep with you when you're wearing a mask.
Mhm. At least not for a long time. Maybe a
Yeah,
couple.
not as an ongoing serious relationship. Imagine that wedding.
Everyone in masks.
Well, just Spider-Man and Black Cat.
Oh, okay. Well, I want everyone to be in masks. Like that's part of the thing. It's a mask wedding.
Matthew Bass, I'm really glad that you're asking this question. I had this in the theater. $10 super chat. He says, and thank you for the support again. Doesn't it feel like we're setting something up with the landlord's daughter? She seems to have a crush on him, and I found myself wishing he started dating her instead of MJ. In the theater, I wondered that for a second, and then on repeat viewings, I always thought, no, I just like her a lot more than Mary Jane because she's kind and seems sensible.
Yeah, she's not even much of a character. Like she just shows up to be nice, but her and McGuire have a lot of chemistry, and I think that's part of why people always thought that.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's more so just that.
Oh, there's a plug for Maker's Mark.
There's also a big Whopper sign in the subway that
I
got
saw that,
by,
yeah, but like you got to give them credit for that. They're gonna have product placement in a Spider-Man movie, but it's gonna be for whiskey.
That is pretty cool.
That's pretty cool.
This is also back when we could smoke cigars in superhero movies.
Yeah, and in the deleted scene with Jameson wearing the Spider-Man suit, he's smoking a cigar in the suit,
Well, one of the coolest
and
things
it's
we do with
awesome.
yeah, one of the coolest things we do with the Doc Ock arms is when he lights his cigar with one. He's got the
Oh yeah,
match.
no, that's great.
And you got to give it to them, like the practical arms look really good.
Okay, so I want to complain about something silly. I don't know whose idea it was that the word precious must be associated with the word tritium, but it got irritating to me on this viewing. It only comes up a couple of times, but it's weird that
This is
it's
gonna be a glass shattering moment where I'm never gonna see this movie the same way again. Is it? Isn't it? Isn't it?
yeah, it's just goofy. It's like that's the adjective that must be used in association with this element where
Stanley adjective.
yeah,
I see,
where
I thought you were
I
gonna make fun of that when he rips the barbed wire, the like top one doesn't rip, so he has to like awkwardly like kind of throw it over his head.
yeah, well, Tobey Maguire talks about that in the commentary where he says that prop doesn't cut into you, it doesn't hurt, but it's weirdly hard to break off. Like it's supposed to be a breakaway thing, but it doesn't come off very easily.
Yeah, no, it looks like a messed up take, but they stayed in character, and it just ended up being the one they
It
used.
sounds like they were stuck with it because they did it a bunch of times and they could not make that prop work.
That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's great. How are we already this far into the third act?
Isn't it crazy?
It's nuts. This is one of my
We're
favorite
already in
shots in the
one of
movie.
the hardest boss fights of any game when I was a kid. This this boss fight in the game kicked my ass.
Spider-Man climbing across the ceiling there, while we're focused on Doc Ock, is one of the best shots in the movie.
Yeah, it looks really good.
I love it. The lighting is really nice.
I also this is like a little thing, but I like that they like really capture the comic book thing of how long are his arms actually.
Yes. Well, they talk in the commentary about like actually putting thought into that, and I'm like,
No, you did.
okay, I guess.
Because there's like some fan nitpicky things that I have with Doc Ock where I don't like how every time they fight, he's always right on Doc Ock punching him. Because part of the appeal, action wise, for Doc Ock with me is like he just can't reach him because of his arms, but we kind of can't do that.
Yeah.
But like as a take, like I get it. Like they probably couldn't have done that feasibly. Like at this point
Look,
with
it's
the
fine.
budget they
Okay,
had.
this movie was co-plotted by the Smallville writers, and they do the same thing with
Exactly.
Kryptonite. Okay,
Exactly.
so
And I like this more than Smallville,
there's
so
always a distance
take it
issue.
away, Sam Raimi. But I was more so saying like it also goes both ways. Like I do like that we have that aspect, and it's all nitpicky stuff. So who cares?
I was just saying that as a joke.
No, get out of here.
Oh yeah, you're gonna begrudge me jokes? All right.
Yeah, no, you can't. This is a very important superhero rewind, Cap.
On a very special episode of the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project.
Exactly. This is the only other place he whips out his assassin blade,
Oh yeah.
and it's only so he can get electrocuted, so he's okay now.
I want to think the only reason he has that is because sometimes he might need like a knife to open a package or something. Like it's not
Open,
even
like,
supposed to be a
Amazon
weapon,
package.
even though it looks really gnarly. It's just, he might be in the middle of an experiment, and then UPS shows up, and he's got to cut a package open.
It's the most hardcore letter opener ever crafted.
So this is the big Superman 2 moment, and I love it. With the cars being pushed across by the wind.
Oh yeah.
That is right out of that movie.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty great. So as we all know, right in this scene, Doc Ock is sucked away to another universe.
So, yep. So we complain because we see it happen. It's not like he drowned.
Well, I think it's specifically when he's got his hand, like the arm on Peter's throat, because that's what he mentions in that movie. He's
Well,
like,
and I'm just being facetious. I realize that it's a retroactive thing that happens, but
no, that's canon.
Well,
this
yeah, I
is
know, but it's
something
like a
they
second
talked about
timeline or
in
something.
the
It's like he got pulled out of here.
I thought Sam Raimi brought it up in his commentary. He was like,
Oh, okay.
he's like, you guys aren't ready for this yet, but your
Okay,
kids are
so
gonna love it.
people have heard me complain about this over and over again, but I want to bring this up again,
The
and I still have
privilege.
the same issue with it. But I want to what's the word I'm looking for? Be more specific about this. So we have the weird inconsistency. I just can't even believe that this like passed a script.
Hmm.
I don't know how it happened. I don't know if there was a rewrite on set and they just forgot what they said earlier. But where Octavius, when he meets Peter, says that intelligence is not a privilege,
It's a gift.
it's a gift. And then here, Peter says, you spoke to me about intelligence. And he says, it's a gift. And then Doc Ock nods and says, a privilege. Well, you said it was not a privilege. I want to go even farther and say that the second scene is actually the way it should have been in the first place. I think so. It isn't that they should have stuck with it's not a privilege. They should have rewritten that first scene to match this because those are not mutually exclusive things. It can be both. It doesn't make sense to be like intelligence is you need to be responsible with it. It's not a privilege. No, it is a privilege. That's why you need to be responsible with it. Like
Absolutely, and that's his
gift and privilege
great
in that
responsibility
situation,
line.
you could almost call synonymous. I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
No, I just said, and that's his great responsibility line. So it's really unfortunate that they botch it.
Yeah. And I think most audience members, I'm not calling people stupid, I think most audience members realize that that's a callback and just amend it in their brain to be that in the first place. Like it's the kind of line that you're gonna sort of remember when it comes up again.
It's close enough that you're just going to accept it.
Yeah, and that is something of a formulaic thing in movies. And it's a good device to go to sometime. Or, well, I mean, we do it all the time, but it can be a good device to go to where you drive a point home by having, really important repeated ideas or phrases like that that characters bring back to either like realize a character arc, opportunity for change, or to drive home a motivation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That was the bit that doesn't look great when he's pulling the thing down on him.
I gotta give this climax though. I think it's really cool that they do the big action climax at the end of the second act, and the actual movie's climax is more of just let's hash out all the character stuff. Like Spider-Man and Doc Ock punch each other for like a minute, and then it's completely over.
Well, and I do really respect this story for having Peter like talk him down.
That's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
it becomes more about that, and it's just Doc Ock's gonna go off and sacrifice himself.
And he saves the day. Yeah.
Yeah, while Peter is just with MJ, and we're wrapping up what we've been doing with them.
Well, Sam Raimi says in his commentary, he almost apologizes for the fact that Spider-Man doesn't physically save the day, where he's like, I know there's people that would have wanted that, but violence rarely solves anything, and Spider-Man is a thinking hero, and I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
But
I like that he apologizes like Stan Lee when it takes too long to get to the action. That's really
I don't
funny.
think he even. I mean, like it's like a pseudo sort of apology, which is like I know people
Yeah.
want that, but he's selling himself short because Peter does save the day. Like he has to say that to Doc Ock so that he'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it counts. That's a heroic moment. Well, if you knew all this time, then why did you treat him like a jerk face?
But you see, Cap, Spider-Man talks down his villains while Superman snaps their necks. So Superman's cooler.
Okay. That's the difference between Spider-Man and Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that Spider-Man is the more altruistic of these two characters?
It's true. I think Spider-Man should make like a web noose and like hang criminals. That'd be cool.
Did you know that the least morally ambiguous character between Spider-Man and Superman is Spider-Man?
I also like that his web here is just plastic. Like it's just wire.
Yeah, that should be sticky, and she
It's
should
just
be
wire.
feeling gross touching it.
Exactly. I wouldn't want to touch his webbing.
Also, she should feel gross doing this.
So stuff like this was some of the most disgusting stuff in these movies for me as a kid
Yeah,
because
it's
I'm
weird.
imagining it coming out of his wrists,
You
and I
just
don't
don't like
like that.
stuff
I
like
don't
coming
like
out of
that.
people. Yeah,
No,
no, that's
I
weird.
never want to see things come out of people. It's gross.
Well, and even if you're super strong like him, I feel like there's this kind of impracticality of holding out a single arm and having that much weight coming down off of it. Like that's weird to me. I
Well,
feel like
does
you'd
like
maybe
can
want
he
to hold
control
it.
how fast it comes out of him?
Yeah, like
It's all gross. I don't like him. I don't like thinking about it.
this is nitpicking,
Let's move
obviously,
on.
but like at least have him hold his other arm with an arm, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of
I-
weird. Fella, 499 super chat. Thank you very much.
Thanks for
Once
getting us
again,
off this gross topic.
he says, despite my disagreements, this was a fun time. I'm glad you enjoyed yourself. Your critiques are smarter than most. I just really miss these big, earnest romantic comic book films. Well, and I'm making that point.
Yeah.
I miss it too. If you go back to earlier reviews and commentaries I've done for this movie, because I've done this for 15 years and this movie comes up and I've had to talk about it a lot, you'll hear me make some of the same points about that relationship, but much, much angrier.
Well,
Like-
I mean, once you've seen Ant-Man Quantumania,
Yeah.
it's a lot nicer coming back to stuff like that.
That stuff is stomachable now to me in a way that it didn't used to be.
I was telling Cap about this a while ago. I rewatched Iron Man, and that like shot up my MCU ranking. And that's always been like a top 10. Like I love Iron Man, but it was just a like I miss this. I miss when movies kind of felt like this. So I get it.
And once again, this is a place where, like, hallucinating your dead father, totally works, and it doesn't feel like just a easy cameo for Defoe. It also helps that he's so good in this scene for as little as he's here.
Mhm.
And this scene was almost not in the movie. I don't know if you know about this.
I
It
didn't
didn't
know.
even occur to Raimi or the writers to do this. And
Really,
then-
I assumed that was always the plan because there's that famous Doc Ock video with Defoe where he's
Yeah.
on set.
I saw that today, but that happened because they decided to add the scene.
Okay.
And they started bringing him to set. So here's what happened: they're shooting his Avenge Me. I was watching this with Jason
Avenge me!
yesterday, and Jason goes, "How is it that his best line delivery is in the second movie when he's on screen for 20 seconds?" He loves that moment.
Are you saying that his best line delivery is not, you know, I'm something of a scientist myself from No Way Home?
No, it is. Okay, this is second to that. But
okay.
what I was, oh my god, what a jump scare! I didn't see that coming. Why would you program your lights to come on when somebody runs into the glass shelves? It's kind of weird.
I think that's good design.
And he needs to be careful because I don't think he's going to turn into Green Goblin. I think he's going to become a Ninja Turtle. But what I was going to say is, this is the thing I learned today from that commentary. I did not remember this. But they're shooting. Sorry, just the setup for this is just like a comic cover, like a full page spread.
And then his
And, like-
costume isn't gonna look
Oh, I
anywhere
know.
near as cool as this.
That's what I'm
and
saying.
that
Is the
dude
third
already
movie feels
sucked.
like a sequel to something else because all the stuff they set up they don't pay off in the right way. Anyway, but that does feel like kind of it looks great, but kind of a contrived setup where it's like all of this looks very planted. But what I was gonna say is they're shooting on the streets of New York, and by happenstance, Defoe is just walking home by himself.
No way.
Yes! And this is how Sam Raimi tells it. And he, by the way, I love the green bow tie.
Yeah, I like that Harry's here. Like he's like, I'm Green Goblin, but I still gotta go to this wedding.
Yeah, well, now he's keeping up appearances.
Exactly. See, if this were amazing too, he would have just shown up as Green Goblin at the wedding. We would have had like a 5 minute scene.
Well, and I want to think that as he's losing his sanity, and he's decided that that he hates Peter Parker,
Hmm.
I if we didn't do the stupid amnesia plot in 3, he would just go after Mary Jane as a matter of course, like take everything away from Peter Parker, try to get her back as his girlfriend again.
Oh yeah, we'll get to it when we get to
They
three,
should
but
have done that.
we'll get to it when we get to three. But I think it's really easy to tweak what is already in that movie to make a good Spider-Man movie.
But yeah, apparently they ran into, or Defoe ran into them on the street, and Sam Raimi's like, "Oh, why the hell aren't you in this movie?" And then they wrote him in the movie.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, none of this plays as like touching, and I'm so happy for Peter Parker because like I don't want him to get with her.
Not this way
Like
too.
she just did this to John Jameson. It's so icky to me.
Yeah.
Like what you do is you go home the night that you find out that he's Spider-Man, or like a day or two later when you've had time to process it, and you go like, okay, John, I can't marry you because the thing that was in my way. Well, or at least you go have a conversation with Peter and you see if you can convince him of what you're going to say in this scene. Like, how is it that you also, he's so passive that if you're her, you don't even know if he'll go along with it. So think about this. He's like, I can't be with you. She's like, let me make that decision. What if he said, no, really, you're gonna get killed if I keep you in my life. I'm really not gonna do that. And she's like, oh crap, I just left this guy at the altar that I was gonna stay with if Peter wouldn't be with me. You see what I'm saying? Like, have the conversation first. Freaking communicate. But this is more dramatic, and it's supposed to be,
But
you
it's a
know,
little bit more trite. Like it's very just
it's
every
really
romantic
trite.
comedy of all time.
Yeah, but it's supposed to be like real heartfelt and more provocative that she does this in a wedding dress.
Hmm.
And I'll also say it's possible that you could have more made me buy it if we just were with her in one or two of the real pivotal moments where she's making this decision. Like we really should see her on her wedding day mulling it over at the
Hmm.
very least.
And I guess I'm glad that it's not like the objection thing where Peter like swings down and he's like, she's into me. Like I'm gonna commit finally. And then he goes down to the wedding and he like runs in. Like I'm glad it's not that. That's something, I guess.
Yeah, you've got people in the comments on opposite sides of the spectrum right next to each other.
Yeah.
Fella says this is a classic Hollywood romance movie moment, and Matthew Bay says this is just awful. I'm sorry, it makes her really unlikable in my opinion. And like, yeah, fella, you get that moment,
Okay, everyone
but
in chat, Cap's gonna break off a pool cue, and we're gonna have tryouts. Everyone who likes this on that side, everyone who doesn't on that side.
it only works to me out of context.
Hmm. Because the context makes it so much worse.
And this shot is wonderful out of context, but I need her to be a different character for me to care about what is implied by that moment.
Hmm.
When she's looking out and she's like, what is our future going to hold? Is this relationship tenable? Is my guy gonna be out, risking his life all the time and gonna die in the next
Who am
couple
I
of
gonna
weeks?
leave for him?
Yeah,
Or, sorry, who will I leave
we all know what you
him
mean.
for someone else?
One reply leaves a super chat. Thanks very much. Listen, I just woke up and I have no idea what's happening. Well, we just finished watching Spider-Man 2. But MJ kind of cheating on her fiance was a bad writer's choice. Still love the movie, though. Yeah, I agree.
You also lived up to your name. You only sent one reply.
Well, and if the point, and obviously the point is supposed to be that wasn't the person she was ever supposed to be with, and she's finally, um, you know, going with her heart or whatever. But again, it's it's so late in like really dramatic on her part
Hmm.
and totally unfair to that guy. But he's not a real character either. He's just a plot device to give her a rebound guy. And yeah, I feel like I'm talking about Smallville again. And
Do you think
and this movie is better than
place where they
Smallville.
don't get together again, like the first
Apart
one?
from
Like
that
it's almost
stuff.
like a doubling down.
I'm sorry, say again?
I said, do you think you could have ended this movie on a place more like the first one, where it's like a doubling down? Maybe they'll get together in 3, but it's not going to happen here. Place.
I think it would have been in its way just as bad, just because you feel like you're being strung along.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Like, no, you're right. What's annoying to me about it is they get to the place I want them to get to by the end of this movie. I just don't like her.
Hmm. No, I agree.
And I don't like the way she does it. So, like, it feels like a toxic relationship. He should not be getting with this girl coming to him in a wedding dress that just left the guy at the altar.
Hmm.
It makes him kind of unsympathetic and throws him under the bus.
Absolutely.
Call me old-fashioned. I don't think people should treat each other like that. Chewbacca's Lover, $2 super chat. And again, it's all about how it's being presented to us, right? Like, the movie's on these characters' sides when they're doing that. We're supposed to applaud them for that choice.
Yeah, this is a happy ending.
It's not, yeah, I mean, it's not a perfect relationship. Again, you do have, I'm not ignoring stuff, you do have that shot of her not sure what the future holds at the end.
Mhm. Yeah, and I at least like that it has that.
And that's nice.
That's at least something.
Chewbacca's Lover, $2 super chat. All this was emotional as a kid. I mean, it was more so for me when I first saw it also. But in sort of the way that this movie is better than this, don't get me wrong. But sort of in the way that finally seeing Death of Superman realized on screen was at the end of BVS. Where
No.
I'm not I'm not buying these characters, but superficially I'm getting this relationship which I want.
Hmm.
It's that.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, we have to have this argument every time we do this movie. This should be the last time though.
Don't say that,
Yeah, I probably shouldn't say that.
because then everyone will make fun of you in the comments in like 30 years when you're doing Spider-Man 2 again. Until you're 90, Cap.
Right. But I wasn't overselling my position at the beginning, was I, Austin? Like I did have the best watch of this I've had in years. Earlier this week, like.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's more
But was
having
I
a
not
good.
super positive on lots of stuff? Like,
Yeah, I think for me, having a really good reaction to this movie is more focusing on the things that work than focusing on the things that don't work. And that's why I kind of flip-flop on it, is I'll have
right?
one viewing where I'm more like, this MJ stuff. And then a viewing like today where it's more like, I really like this Aunt May stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything except for the bank scene where nobody talks about the fact that Peter's a coward and just runs away.
The bank scene's okay because it gave us Drag Me to Hell. The bank scene in that movie is just uh, the setup like initial scene of Drag Me to Hell, so I'll give it a pass.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, no, it's really funny. And that's the movie he does after 3.
Okay, well, somehow we're already through this. That felt like a whirlwind.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm sure when we get off of the commentary tonight, or the stream tonight, I'm gonna be like, oh God, here's the 60 other things I should have brought up.
Well, I have a question for you, Cap.
Yes, sir.
Because last time you gave me a 50-50 shot, you were like, pick one of these. Is there any part of you that is wishing I picked Catwoman for this week?
No, honestly, not. I just because I got like really in the mood for this for whatever reason.
You could have rewatched Catwoman and been like, God, I miss when we made movies like this.
It,
And then I would have said we do, and they're called Venom.
some of it's also just about some of it's also just about the sequence that we're doing. Like last week we did kind of mediocre stuff. The week before we did weird stuff. Like we haven't had a really great movie in a while.
Yeah,
I
not
guess
since
Mask of
RoboCop,
Zorro
I
was the last
guess.
thing.
Oh, Mask of Zorro, yeah.
Yeah. So I think I was kind of ready for not that I'm intentionally doing that, but I was ready for a great movie again, or at least like a really fun movie again.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, one of the big heavy hitters.
well, I mean, there's bad heavy hitters, but
We don't talk about
we
those.
don't talk about those. Anyway, so let's go ahead and go to tweet length reviews now, and then Austin and
Okay.
I will give you both our rating and our ranking. We're doing that now.
I'm so conflicted on my rating. Not rating, my ranking. Sorry, I should say.
Yeah, I got my rating pretty well locked in. Where this is gonna fall in my list, I couldn't even tell you right now. But we're gonna do that live. So Austin,
Mhm.
can you bring up Discord for me?
Yep, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, thanks, man.
Hmm.
And I can go ahead and read the Patreon ones while you're doing that. We've got two, and the first one is from Joe Turner, who says, like 60s Batman, it succeeds in being completely genuine to a child and hilariously camp to an adult. Oh, interesting. I think it's a little better than that. And it's a masterclass in both. Hard to complain, but like all the Raimi movies, it does Mary Jane dirty. Superhero. Really well written review. Thanks, Joe Turner.
Hmm.
By the way, quick plug for Patreon. Patreon.com/Geekvolution. The $5 tier allows you to put in tweet length reviews for the show, and you can do this for every episode. And we are doing the show weekly, or mostly weekly. I'm saying that after I'm gonna have to announce we're taking next week off. But when we're on every week, we're doing the show now. And the $10 tier lets you become a Patreon producer where you get even more cool perks related directly to the show. Besides that, and I'll talk about that again a little bit later, Justin Hayes, it's a classic for a good reason, and it does a lot of things very right, namely Peter himself. That said, I do feel that on occasion, in retrospect, the film feels a little quaint. Often in a good way, but sometimes not. Still, it's a superhero. Do we have any reviews on Discord?
Yes, we have one, two, three, four, five, and they're not as of one mind as Patreons were.
Well, we only had two on Patreon. That's not a big sample set.
True, but they were both like, "Oh, this is a superhero." So starting right off,
This
we
could be
have
all over the
John.
place. I wonder,
So
are we going to get any villains? Wow.
starting off, we got John, Subject 879. He says bad writing leads to nothing in the movie coming together, and some really unlikable characters. Rating villain. Also,
That was
John's on
John?
Smallville, so you can throw his opinion out.
Well,
But
it's really interesting that John would say that, given that, yeah, he
oh,
likes a
John
lot.
hates this movie.
Yeah, and he likes some stuff in Smallville that, well, he
Yeah,
and I
I
have a
always
lot
make fun
of
of.
similar opinions of the stuff that doesn't work in Smallville, but I just think that's really interesting. And nothing against John, but if he was here instead of you, we would have had a very different conversation.
Oh yeah,
That's
full
very
on
interesting.
battle. Victor, one of the best superhero movies ever because it's one of the few that truly explores the cost of a normal person. The cost a normal person would bear in order to be a hero, thus making them seem more heroic. Rating legend. MattBat68. One of the most overrated superhero movies out there. Not a fan of Peter and MJ's characterization, or the whole losing his power plot, which robs Peter of his agency. The direction is admittedly impressive, but the characters are too unlikable for me to get invested. Rating villain. I don't disagree with much of that.
Yeah, once again, it's just about degree. It's like
Yeah,
the stuff that
exactly.
works enough that it's better than that to me. It's also interesting listening to Sam Raimi's commentary because he's very charitable to the writing, but you can read a little bit of frustration in his voice about some of the dialogue and plot points that he had to work with,
Sure.
where
Look,
he's
I've
doing his
always
best
said
to
that.
elevate it, but he's talking about places where they had to rewrite dialogue of the day and places where he was really glad that he sometimes had actors that would change lines like slightly improvising to make them better than what was written. They talk about that.
Mhm. If you took like the direct like Raimi's direction and the writing of like Homecoming, I think you'd have the definitive Spider-Man movie.
I absolutely agree with that because to me, live action wise, Homecoming is still the best of them.
It is for me as well. Chewbacca's lover is saying that
I
he
see it.
skipped his Patreon.
I see it.
Okay.
Finish Discord, and then I'll do that one.
Okay, Serial When Pigs Fly. Spider-Man 2 explores the responsibility of Peter's life. It is a great character study on the price he must pay to be Spider-Man. Although the film insinuates that Peter's life would be better if he made the selfish choice, and it is his responsibility to the people of New York to protect them. The film is uplifting and has one of the great speeches by Aunt May, and then no rating.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it implies that in the short term that is the case.
Mhm.
But I mean, in the long term, if you think about it, everything that happens with Doc Ock more or less probably would have if there was no Spider-Man. So like New York is probably destroyed, right?
Yeah, 100%.
I mean, Spider-Man
Although maybe he can't get his trillium, his
is precious tritium.
trillium, yeah,
Yeah,
whatever it's called.
Precious tritium that there's only 25 pounds of on the whole planet.
Yep. Hot soup. Spider-Man 2 has flaws. It's a bit dated, and I personally never thought it was as good as the first. But I do think its heart is in the right place. It's one of the few movies that still makes me feel like a kid when I watch it, and I love it for that. Rating superhero.
Yeah, great review. And then Chewbacca's lover put one in the last minute that I didn't have when we started. I love this movie. Remember seeing it in theaters as a kid. Probably still the best Spider-Man film. Superhero. All right, thank you guys for the tweet length reviews. And let's go ahead and get now into there was a bit of a spectrum there, as you said.
Couple villains mixed in there.
Yeah, I was really surprised there were two villains. My guess is that you and I will land on the same rating, but
Probably.
we'll see if that happens. Why don't you go first?
Okay. I think like a lot of people are saying, I have a lot of issues with this movie. I think they're almost all writing, and then overall, I like the direction. I think Sam Raimi bumps it up quite a bit, and it's ultimately a really fun movie, even if things don't come together perfectly, and it helps me get through some stuff. And then you also have things like Aunt May that I think is done really well. So it's not quite a legend, but I would give it a superhero. I think it's flawed, but I enjoy it, and at this point, I've kind of settled into it's just a good movie. Like it's a fun time, even if it's not perfect.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. And with all the story issues, and again, some things have come around on a little bit. Like if I still had the same complaints that I used to about Harry Osborn, it probably drops it to hero. But the fact that I'm now totally won over by that, but I still have the Mary Jane issues I have, that's the one big thing. And like, yeah, I don't like the subplot with the power loss thing, but that's not enough to drag it to mediocre. And you're right, like, and you have the silly, like, method thing that I talked about with Doc Ock. With he's gonna get a subject to tell him where the guy he wants is by almost killing him. Okay, good plan. I want to think it was just the arms that did that.
I was
he
about
just
to
went
say,
along with it.
it's controlled by AI. Don't ask the arms to draw you a painting or a picture.
But yeah, like I almost feel like I have to go all the way to superhero just because it's impressive how well a pretty messy script is elevated. And yeah, I'm more about story than I am with with like how good of a ride it is, particularly with this show. At the same time, it's also about what is it trying to accomplish. And like, yeah, it wants to be a real story, but it doesn't want to be like the most realistic thing, and it's as much about the spectacle as it is about the story. Like those two things are very much in tandem.
Mhm.
And it does the spectacle thing right, and it does a good deal of the story stuff right.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And it is real foundational and a thing that that like I do kind of miss now.
Mhm. No, there's aspects of this that we never got better than. Like it's
Yes.
the definitive Spider-Man movie is the first two Raimi films and Homecoming put in a blender.
Yeah, so you'll probably never see that in one movie.
No. And I don't mean like plot wise, because I know some people are bashing Homecoming in the chat, but it's just I don't know, better writing mixed with way better overall filmmaking.
Yeah. Okay, let's do our ranking real quick then.
Oh
And
God, I still
I've
am
got your
not.
letterboxed open.
I put it in a place, but
Do you want to do yours first, or attempt to?
I'll look at yours first, just because I'm like maybe you'll sway me. I'm
Okay,
still trying to decide.
where do I want to go? I'm looking around. So what I like to do is kind of start in a row. Do I
Mhm.
like it more than Warzone? Yeah. Is it better than the theatrical cut or the director's cut of Daredevil? Yeah, especially when you get in that it's a much more competent director.
Mhm.
And then Gods and Monsters, yeah, Mystery Men. I like that movie, but you like it more than me. So then it becomes like, wow, is it better than The Shadow? Yeah,
Yeah,
marginally.
I'd say.
And then I get into a weird place where I'm like, is it better than '89?
I mean, here's the thing,
This
Cap.
is tricky for yeah, this is real
I,
tricky.
I like both of these movies. You're arguing about what's better, the most overrated film of your generation or the most overrated film of my generation.
I think that is one of the most profound things you've ever said.
Thank you. And I don't say many profound things.
That
It's a lot.
that was excellent though, Austin. Wow. Well, that almost makes me feel vindicated to put it between Batman and Powerpuff Girls. Where like I feel I'm almost obligated to put it just under Batman. And I do think I have to put it slightly over Powerpuff Girls.
Hmm.
I guess
That
that's
makes
where I'm
sense.
putting it. That does put Blade above it, but I think Blade is a better movie than this movie. Maybe. God, this is hard.
Because now I'm like, should I be rethinking where Blade is on my list?
Yeah, that's where I'm at. And see, this should always be kind of like tentative. Like we should be allowed to move things around.
I agree.
Uh
I'm gonna
for
move Blade around a little
for
bit.
right now, yeah, am I gonna do that? I'm gonna sandwich it between Powerpuff Girls and Batman, and then I might move. I might also move Blade. All right, let's see what Austin does.
Uh... Okay, I'm moving stuff around. My big thing is I don't. Part of me wants to say I like Spider-Man 2 over X2, and the other part of me is saying no, X2 is definitively a better movie, which it is.
Yeah, and
But
I don't have any qualms with that. That is not a argument I'm having.
no, I know.
No confliction here.
Okay, okay, I think I'm good.
John Blade is better. Well, yeah, but John, you gave it a villain.
Yeah, John. Yeah,
Chewbacca's lover, $2 super chat. Raimi Spider Man is Burton Batman for us. Yeah,
yeah,
that's
exactly.
essentially what Austin just said. Although
And then we also have a
it's a
Batman
movie
that
that
fits
makes
that
more
role.
sense. Say again.
So then we also have a Batman movie that fits that because Dark Knight has some of that energy too. But we'll get there when we get there.
Yeah. It also, I think. Well, we'll talk about it when we get there. I was gonna say it elevates the genre more than either of those do, but when you put it in its period, that is not true. You're
Hmm.
right; they are all doing that.
Okay, I think I'm settled in. If you want to pull up my list.
Chewbacca's lover, you don't know how huge this was for those of us that saw it as children. Why do I had siblings that were younger?
And I do, because I was, and
Because
I
you were,
hated this
because you
movie
were
as a
there.
kid. I like it more as an adult.
So I'm sorry, what were you gonna say? Like, and
Uh,
I'm not trying to take anything away from you. I get that, like, if you're younger than me with certain things, you're gonna have a different kind of affinity for it. I'm just saying, like, I'm not. I mean, I'm older than you, but I had younger siblings, and I'm not that much older.
mhm.
But yeah, I mean, I was driving a car to the theater to see the first Spider-Man, and I was going into college with the second one. Okay, where'd you put it?
Uh, did you pull up my list?
Yeah,
I
but I
put
but I
it
have
at.
to refresh it.
Oh, okay.
I didn't know if I did. What I mean is, I didn't know if you had actually uh, put it
Oh, yeah.
anywhere yet.
I'm fully settled in. So
Oh, so you did put Blade above it.
I ended up moving Blade. I had Blade under the shadow, and I was like, I should move Blade up.
Oh, okay. See, I was wondering if I should move it lower.
Yeah, no, I could tell that's what you were thinking, but I think because I was looking at your list and I was like, you know what, I have Blade maybe too low.
Yeah, where do I
Blade
have it
probably
right now?
shouldn't be under Moonwalker.
I have it at. I've got to figure out how to number these like you have it.
Oh, so if you have it open already, if you just go to edit, um, there's a section at the bottom that should say ranked.
Okay, I'm an idiot. I don't even know how from this page to go to edit. Oh, there
Oh,
it is. I've always thought Letterboxd was laid out kind of weird.
when are you using desktop? Because I've only used it mobile, so I
Well,
don't.
yeah,
That's.
I'm using desktop because I have to show it on OBS.
I know I said it all dumb.
So
Okay, remember when I
yes.
said that I don't say profound things, Cav?
Well, it's not mutually exclusive. You can say profound things and dumb things.
Yeah.
Sometimes you also say dumb things. Hey, I'm sorry. What do you do? What do you do to make the numbers happen?
There should be a little like trophy picture that says ranked, and then you can click that.
Oh, here it's not a trophy. It's just a check mark.
Oh, okay. Weird.
This is fascinating to everyone, I'm sure.
Everybody loves this.
We got it. We did it.
We done did it.
All right. We are finished with Spider-Man 2. One more in the books. I thoroughly enjoyed watching that with you.
Yeah, it was a good time. I feel like that was definitely different than the last one you did.
It felt like work, though, man. There was just so much to talk about. And I know I'm going to kick myself 5 times when we're done with this. Just
Mhm.
things that'll come to me like, how did we not talk about that?
Yeah, you're gonna be like, oh, we didn't even talk about Ted Raimi,
We didn't talk about Ted Raimi.
and Ted Raimi's awesome.
We didn't we didn't talk about Joxer from Xena Warrior Princess.
Who?
That's Ted Raimi's character in Xena Warrior Princess.
Oh, I don't know. I just know Ted Raimi is Ted Raimi.
Yeah, I'm just telling you that.
I don't know anything about Xena.
That's where I first saw him.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Raimi did work on those.
Yeah, and that's why Lucy Lawless has a cameo in the first Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, and she's like completely unrecognizable. I didn't know that until like a year ago.
And see, that's how familiar I was with her in the theater. I could tell that's who that was.
Yeah, no, and
And
I mostly know her for the Evil
and I
Dead
was like,
show.
this is weird. She's got nose rings and stuff.
Guy with 8 hands. Sounds hot.
Fella, your disagreements did not come off antagonistic.
No, because I don't think we disagree. Like, especially it's just we have different opinions on how well it's handled.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're right about what they might be doing on paper. I
Hmm.
still say the movie as presented, it's muddled enough that I can't tell. But you're
Yeah,
probably right. It just
I just wish it
the
was more in the
execution in there for
forefront.
me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Respectful disagreements are not only welcome, they're important.
If there's anything I love, it's living in a bubble, and I think anyone who challenges my bubble should probably be shot.
Boy, I think that might be the most profound thing you've ever said.
Exactly. Yeah.
Austin, would you kindly tell everybody what we're going to be doing next time? We are going to take next week off from regular content. Like I said in another show, we might be doing a Captain Logan this week, Captain Logan show this week. I'm not sure yet, but
I
the
guess it
stuff I usually
depends
do
on
with
how big the news is tonight with the D23 stuff.
Oh, I didn't even know about that. Okay, I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, the
Um,
Marvel news is probably out, but obviously we're doing this, so I don't know what it is.
okay, in that case, we probably will have a show next week,
Depending,
assuming
they
I can
might
work
have
it in.
nothing.
But Austin's out of town, and I'm gearing up for a big film shoot next weekend, so I need extra time to prepare for that. But I might do some extra unplanned streams here and there just to keep things moving. But anyway, in 2 weeks we'll be back to our now weekly show. Austin, I'm loving doing this every week.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun.
It's been great. Hopefully, we don't get burnt out too much on superhero movies doing this every week. But it's just nice making progress, and we're doing it so often that every time we come in now, it feels like I just did it. I'm like, did we just do Hellboy? Like,
We just did 2 Hellboys and nobody cared.
Ren Davis says, "Nah, Cap, you have to uh, obstinately stand by your opinion and ignore everyone who doesn't agree with you."
That's a flagrant use of the word obstinately. I'm just gonna throw that out there. For everyone who didn't get that, After Dark is a show you can get on Patreon.
$2 a month on Patreon. Yeah. Anyway, would you kindly announce what we're doing next time? I'm very excited about it.
Yeah, so we're doing something that I don't think you ever did on Rewind.
No, and I even announced it at one point, and then it didn't end up happening. This is years ago.
Oh, there you go. So next time we are doing the 2-part Dark Knight Returns film.
And we'll do the unbroken cut too.
That's what I assumed. I assumed we'd just do it all together.
Hopefully, people have it that way. I mean, we could take a break in between, I guess, but I don't. But it's not that long. Like you put it together, and it's 2.5. It's not even 2.5 hours. I mean, it's a regular movie length.
I don't think I've even seen them separated.
So I bought them that way originally, and then when they put it out together, I bought it again. I was that doofus.
I think I just waited for that. I didn't for Long Halloween, so I'm really stupid. But I don't know. Have they released a complete Long Halloween?
They did. Have? And I think they released it immediately when the second one came out. I could be wrong about that.
Oh, okay. That's even weirder. Why did I buy part 2?
I could be wrong about that. Well, and like maybe I am wrong about that because I also that one I only have in 2 like that. And then Death of Superman I do have the 1 cut.
Oh, okay.
Or did they release that as a box set and they didn't do I don't think they actually did a complete cut of that because it had 2 titles. Now that I'm thinking about it. So I think that one it technically is a 2-part movie, but it's also not really. So yeah. It also
I've
sucks.
never seen those. Yeah.
I can't wait to do that with you.
Oh god, I didn't even like Doomsday. Now we gotta do more.
In some ways, it's worse than that. In some ways, or at least it pissed me off just as much or more.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we're gonna do it. Dark Knight Returns, I have threatened forever to do, and Austin and I know there's gonna be interest in that, and because I've never talked about it, people really like that movie. And,
yeah, so not just next week, but the week after, we will be the law.
We're on kind of a Batman kick right now with Cape Crusader, which we're gonna review on Sunday. By the way, if all goes according to plan, first season of that. And Austin and I were kicking around doing a poll for animated Batman movies, and then we realized that each of us would have put Dark Knight Returns on our list for the poll, and I was like, let's just do it. Let's just finally get it knocked out.
Do it live.
Exactly. That's what we do. Jareth Gearhart, I hope you guys do The Punisher this year. It's also a 20th anniversary.
I'd love to do that.
I think for the anniversaries, we'll keep spinning a wheel. I think every few weeks we'll do an anniversary wheel, and the ones that don't come up we'll do eventually. But
yeah, no, I would love to do that. I could see why you'd maybe want to hold off just because we have done Warzone already, but it was the second one we did, maybe.
It's been quite a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah. No, I'm not against it. I mean, like, how many Batmans have we done by now?
It's true.
But there are lots more of those. There's like 40 Batman movies.
We only have 2 more Punisher movies.
We gotta really pace ourselves. Yeah, there's 2 more Punisher movies, and one of them barely even counts as a Punisher movie. I like it, okay? It's not bad.
I gotta rewatch it. I gotta rewatch it for my 100 list because I remember really liking it, but I don't remember much about it.
Oh, that's the other thing is we're gonna start that pretty soon.
Mhm.
Our countdown of our top 100 superhero movies of all time, and then we're gonna put our feelers out to you guys and let you help us compile a list, like we just did with DC and Marvel superheroes on the
Mhm.
channel. This is separate from Superhero Rewind, but we're gonna do a collective community list. I think we're gonna wait and read and put that out and read those after we do our 100, which will take a few shows.
Yeah, I think we can have because the list, like the questionnaire thing's already made. I think we can have that, like people can vote while we're doing those videos.
Well, see, what I'm afraid is we'll sway somebody or we'll bring up something that they forgot about, and they'll be like, "Crap, I already turned my list in." Although we could just keep it open for a long time, and
When you can't edit it,
they could
like,
amend their list. Yeah.
yeah. Like I know Jason had to do that. Adam March, I know, messaged me and asked if we could do that, and you can't. Like you could do it.
There was a shocking amount of interest in that.
Mhm.
To what I expected it would be, and I want to do that for several other things. That was a really fun exercise.
Yeah, it was. It was. Those were both. I think I've watched both of those videos twice now. It was a lot of fun.
It was great, and thank you once again for all your help with that.
Eh.
Because you were also great. You weren't even there, but you made these great slideshows. It was wonderful.
I also called Hawkeye Joker, so you know, I should maybe be fired.
No, that was the highlight of the whole thing. I should make that a short.
Only if it includes the part where I go in and change it.
Well, then I have to edit it.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Inside Baseball,
Yeah.
there was a few slides that didn't have GIFs until I changed the Joker thing, and then I was like, oh, here's some things I could like tweak before you get to
Oh,
it.
really? So you were editing it on the fly as I was going?
Only like 2 or 3 slides.
Okay,
There was like
that's
a couple
great, though.
things where after I did that, I was like, oh, I could make this like a little bit better.
Oh, that's so funny. All right, we're gonna get going. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We sure appreciate you. Join us again Sunday night. I don't have a time for that show yet. It'll be 8 or 9 Central. I'm not sure yet, but I will publish I will put out a post about that at least by Saturday. Once again, you can become a Patreon producer at patreon.com/geekvolution. The $10 tier makes that possible, and one of the perks that you get is your name read at the end of every Superhero Rewind commentary. But we also hang out with producers ostensibly once a month. We're due for another one. We should do that real soon. And you can chat with us on Discord there, and you can help us choose things for the show. And this time again, we just landed on Dark Knight Returns because we need to finally do that. But we will put out a poll for the next
one. Yeah.
Almost assuredly. Yeah.
Yeah, because we've kind of been going back and forth, and that was like the next one for the poll, but then it was like, let's just do Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah, we've been kind of going back and forth. Sometimes it's the poll, sometimes it's a wheel spin. We're trying to keep it interesting.
We could always do an anniversary poll too.
That's a great idea too. We should do that next time we have an anniversary.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, thanks again to all of our patrons, but especially our producers, including Breezy Hemi, Jesse Surtees, Chewbacca's Lover, Dr. Hello, Gooster123, Joe Turner. Some of these guys were with us this evening. Jojira, John Matthew McLean, Matt Bat68, Michael Martin, SS Jerry, Super Billy, Thomas Edgehill, Victor, Abic Stark, Adam March, Damon Begay, Hot Soup, Invisipig is back, Kareem Roberts, Matthew Brody, Miguel Rodriguez, this guy, The Day Ghost, Unknown Passenger, and Wendell Jones. Thanks again for joining us, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again real soon. I was Captain Logan, and this was Austin, The Day Ghost.
Thwip.
Later, folks.
I'm not even going to do my cooler web noise, just thwip.
Well, you have a cooler one?
Yeah, we did this on After Dark. We each had a sound that we did. You did the Predator noise, I did the web, and Brandon did the Coke opening.
That's been a while. I forgot all about that.
Yeah, it was like the...
But nobody gets to hear it tonight.
There you go, I just did it.
I missed it!
Going back on it. Oh, well, now you don't get to hear it. Thwip.
Oh, man, I'm not good enough for the... Okay, good night, everybody!
See ya.